And I remember 35, people saying, girl, you better go get a man. You know you almost 40. As if almost 40 is bad. I kept asking myself, is it better to be alone? Does this feel right? Does he feel like you're Mr. Right? Or is he just your Mr. Right now?
So many women will worry about being alone forever or dying alone. So many women will worry about my biological clock is ticking, or maybe I should get married for financial security. You didn't succumb to any of that. So how on earth did you stay strong in yourself and who you are to make sure that you waited for the right person?
I've always been adamant about being clear that no one else's expectations is supposed to be my life. That was really important for me. I remember at 30 and I remember 35, people saying, girl, you better go get a man. You know you almost 40. And as if almost 40 is bad. As if my beauty at 40 wasn't an evolved version of my beauty at 25. Like, I'm a better me every day, God willing. God willing. And so what I'm most excited about for my husband and I is my husband gets an evolved version of Lisa. Now, everyone evolves at different places. And for me, this was mine. I didn't want to bring someone into my chaos. I believe that my partner deserved for me to have done more work. My journey isn't everyone else's journey. And as women, man, do we buy what we're sold. Don't buy everything that you're sold. Like, who's to say that my 50 wasn't more fabulous? Like, who I am at 55 she's so much better than the woman that I was. And I appreciate the woman I was at 29. But what I jokingly say to my husband now is what I'm excited about, honey, is that now I know who you're married to. At 29, I wasn't sure. I was still searching. I was still wondering. I was still questioning. I believe that we should take advantage of our individual journeys. And that your journey may say marriage at 23 is excellent. My journey may say marriage at 55 is excellent. Her journey may say marriage at 43 is excellent. Her journey may say that she doesn't have to get married. A friend of mine told me when I was 34, he said, Lisa, you have a huge assignment on your life. I'll never forget Barry Spilchuk out of Toronto, Canada. I was at the Marriott Hotel in Los Angeles. I'll never forget the moment. For some reason, it left an indelible imprint on me. He said, Lisa, God has a divine assignment on your life. And you got to prepare yourself because your assignment may not include marriage. Because what you do is so big for the world that God may not want someone in your life to take your attention. And I remember at that time, Lisa, I sat there and it was like a hit, boom, like 33 at the thought, I may never get married. And then I sat with it and I went, okay. Well, here, I'm not going to ask for a particular outcome. I'm going to begin to pray to God, not to impose my belief system on anyone. I call him God, call him whatever you choose. But I'm going to not pray for a particular outcome. I'm going to pray for the awareness and the capacity to handle the assignment on my life, whatever that might include or might not include. That's when I became more committed to my contribution to this planet than I was to how the design looks and that it looks like what the world or society says it looks like. I want my life here to be play full out. I want my life here to be a full freaking contribution. Whatever that looks like. Married at 20, married at 40, married at 55, or not married. I want my life to play full out. And so I was always freer on. I was more fluid because there was a bigger picture to me than marriage. Like marriage is a part of the equation, it's the chapter, it's not the book. Like marriage is a chapter, it's not the book. And the book is while she was here, the dash between her birthday and her transition day, man, that dash danced. That dash disrupted. That dash was dangerous. That dash was embracive. That dash was inclusive. That dash was unapologetic. That dash was freaking on fire. That was bigger to me, the dash and what I made my dash mean than getting married.
Ooh, wow.
Well,
All right, so how do you start? That was so far. I don't know where to start. How do you then take that dash
yeah.
and really assess what is right for you,
Right.
and push out the
Right.
external noise.
Right.
Because to your point, you have people that's coming at you
Yeah.
to say 35.
Yeah.
Well, hang on a minute, but if you want kids, but hang on a minute,
Yeah.
no one's going to want you. Or, the older you get, the harder it'll be to find.
Yep.
So how do you start to block that out so you can figure out what that dash is?
Right. I love that question because that's been my life, right? I was a single mother at 29, and my son's father went to prison when he was 8 months old. My son, at the time we're recording this, he turns 29 this year, and his father is still in prison. And so there was a lot of heat, a lot of pressure on me to right that wrong. Hello, we make these mistakes and these poor decisions early in our lives, and our chance is redemption. And at any given time, redemption would be marry well. And I just have to say to all the suitors that dated me and courted me and offered me marriage, I celebrate them. I had amazing men in my life. I just knew I would have been doing it for the optics at that time. I would have been doing it for the relief.
How did you know that?
Because I check into how my gut feels. Now I didn't always. I didn't always. And I remember there was a time when I was engaged to be married. My son Jelani was 3 years old, and I was swooned. I was succumbed by the loneliness. And I liked the image. And if I got married when Jelani's young, then he could be raised with a father, and like all of the stuff. And I got engaged, and my stomach, my intuition was telling me wrong, 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 wrong. But I was trying to do what I felt was optically right, 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 right. And 5 months from the wedding, I knew it was off. I knew the morning. I felt in my gut something bad is going to happen today. And I went through the entire day and nothing bad happened. And then I went to sleep that night. And I woke up at 3:20 a.m. I remember because I looked over at the clock as I woke up with my then fiance's hands wrapped around my throat. And he choked me until I passed out. And 3 days later, he picked me up and threw me 3 feet across the room. And I looked up and I was an abused woman because I didn't listen to what my intuition was saying. It doesn't feel right. This isn't the time. And Lisa, it took me years. It took me years. I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. And I realized that I had lost myself, Lisa. I had lost myself in being a mother. I had lost myself in being someone's fiance. I had lost myself in living the dream and being the image. And I prayed to God, if you let me find myself again, I'll never lose her. I'll never lose her. I'll listen to her intuition. I'll listen to the silent messages, the quiet whispers. I'll listen. And so you asked me, how did I know? And I know because I had gone through that when I didn't know, when I didn't listen, when I was chasing the acceptance, I was chasing the image, I was chasing making other people happy about my life situation. So by the grace, I got out of that. When I could look at myself in the mirror again and I could even love who I saw. When I can complete the sentence, Lisa, I'm proud of you. And I actually had an ending again. Because there were years, Lisa, when I didn't have an ending. There were years when all I could think about was how I endangered my small child, how I endangered myself, how I easily could have ended up in a casket. And my son could have ended up in foster care or beside me. Because the cost was so high to not listen to my intuition, I said, oh no. So as the years passed and I turned 35 and 40 and 45 and 50, and the conversations of, will you ever get married? The conversations of, watch out, you're going to be too old. The conversations of, no one wants a woman who's a CEO after she's made so much money, after she's had so much notoriety. Even in dating, I would date someone and they'd say, I don't want to be the stepman to your Oprah experience. I got it all. I would listen. Does this feel right? Does this feel long term? Does this feel like you're forever? Does he feel like you're Mr. Right? Or is he just your Mr. Right now? Is it better to be alone? You are good company for yourself. I had to learn to be good company for myself. I like my company. I had to learn that my silence is okay. A quiet house is okay. That I'm developing for him. And so I literally kept listening, Lisa. I kept asking myself, if it felt right, I leaned in. If it didn't feel right, I didn't lean in. I didn't try to put perfume over poo-poo. If it's crap, it's crap. You put perfume on it, it's still crap with perfume on it. And I had some relationships that were crap. They just looked good, but they didn't smell good to me. And I accepted that. I was honest. I removed my ego from the room, or my she-go. Whenever I got into a relationship and it wasn't right, I didn't try to make it right because I didn't want to optically show that I'm single again. So I became okay. I stopped listening to the chatter. I began to talk back to the chatter. When people would say things to me, I'd say, but hold on, that's your story. But I'm writing my story. And no one can write my story but me. Only one person holds the pen to this story in their hand, and that's me. You can't write my story. When you say you should be married, when someone tells you should be, they're trying to write your story. And with all due respect, I'll let you read my story. But I'm gonna write my story. I'm the author of my own autobiography. I'm the designer of my own destiny. And that's not to be exclusive of people and to say I don't want input and I don't want feedback and I don't want community, because I do. But I have to be willing to hear Lisa, because I'm the only one that has to live with Lisa's decisions. And so I tell my husband, I waited for you. I said no to a lot for you. I said some yeses to long nights for you. I waited. I knew what I deserved. I knew what I wanted, and I knew what it should feel like. And Lisa, I'm energetically high, high kinesthetic. So I feel, and I feel powerfully, and I stop ignoring the feeling. If the feeling was, and I had people in my life that it didn't make sense that I would say no to them, other than it didn't feel right.
Because everything on paper you would think was perfect.
On paper, it was excellent. I mean, I attract amazing people into my life, men and women, and opportunities. And my husband and I were friends for 8 years. And he would text me once a month for 8 years and just say hi. And so I didn't know he was who he was in my life. I didn't know. I would rush into relationships. I do everything at warp speed. Everything at warp speed. Everything at warp. Pedal to the metal. Let's just go fast, fast, fast. Ooh, ooh, ooh. That was me. But I would never run into marriage. I would never run into marriage. I was like, no, 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 no. And I pressed pause and I started pumping the brakes when it came to a life partner, because I knew I wanted to share my life with someone. I knew I deserved to have a friendship. And I also knew that I wasn't friends long enough often. So when my husband emerged in my life, he emerged only after 8 years of being my friend, and I had no intention for him. I wasn't trying to design my husband. You have to watch out when you have success, because when you have success, you can start, and I started curating every experience to complement that success. And it didn't have its own organic growth, because I'm shaping the optics. And so with my romance, I wanted to not shape the optics. I needed it to organically grow, like that 7th grade. You like me? Check the box. Yes, no, maybe. Will you date me? Like, I needed something to be organic in my life. Everything had become brand developing and brand securing and brand shaping and brand protection. And my love life isn't about my brand. My love life is about my love.
So that's so freaking beautiful. But there's a massive chasm between I wasn't listening to the whisper to now where you're like, I am listening to my intuition as my guiding source. So how did you begin to listen to that whisper that you were ignoring for so long, so that you could then evolve into being the person that you complete yourself? I actually had one of your quotes is, you complete yourself. Your partner is a complement to your completion. So how the hell do you complete yourself? by listening to that voice in the
Yeah.
first place?
So first of all, that whole concept, we often look for someone, you hear it, my partner completes me. And I go, that's unfair. Like, that's a big burden. That's a big weight. Like, my job is to complete Lisa and then to select and have this beautiful soul complement my completeness. Then there's 1 + 1 = 11, right? So number one, I had to learn how to trust me. I had to learn how to trust Lisa, to listen to Lisa. Because when you don't trust yourself, you listen to everyone else's, what should I do? What do you think I should? What do you think? What? Because you're not trusting you. And it wasn't that I would trust me, Lisa, and this is so important. It wasn't that I trusted that I would always make the right decision. I began to trust my get up muscle when I screwed up. I saw that every time I fell, every time I totally screwed it up, every time I made the worst decision ever, every time I face planted, every time I got up. Sometimes I sprung up, sometimes I staggered up. Sometimes I had to sit for a minute and catch my breath. When my son's father went to prison, I had to sit for a minute and catch my breath. When I was frauded, I had to sit for a minute and catch my breath. You know, when I was physically abused, I had to sit for a minute and catch my breath. But every time I got up. So when I learned that I could get up, I trust my get up muscle. I started trusting myself more because I said, okay, hold on. What's the worst thing that could happen? And I would literally, some people thought it would be negative, but I would use it as a power. I go, what's the worst thing that can happen? I can bounce back from that. I literally would go to the worst. So then I go, okay, trust yourself. Trust yourself that you can get out. What's the best thing that can happen? Okay, I can manage that too. I literally would see the scenario and go, I can handle that. And so I began to listen to myself more because I trusted Lisa more. A lot of times when we don't listen to ourselves, it's because we don't trust ourselves. We don't trust how we would handle it. But most importantly, we don't trust how we would bounce back.
Or if we can bounce
Or
back.
if we can bounce back. I trust that I can bounce back. And I think for me personally, I had been hit enough and I cried enough and I fell to my face enough. I had been devastated enough, floored enough. I had enough evidence of broken Lisa, scared Lisa. Damn, I can't believe I did that, Lisa. Like, you did that again? You're here again? That Lisa. I had enough evidence that in her brokenness, she still had the will to get back up one more time. Don't get up 1,000 more times. Just get up one more time. And I had one more time in me. 1,000 different times, I just had one more time in me. And so I began to trust the woman that I am more than the woman that I was trying to become. I had to trust the woman that I am. I'm always becoming. We're becoming. You're becoming. But I'm not going to see more of who I'm becoming than I'm going to see more than who I am. Like, I am who I am because of my choices. And either they gave me a great outcome or they gave me a great lesson. And I trust them both. I trust her. I trust me. I trust my imperfection. I trust my insecurities. I trust my loneliness. I trust all things that make me the imperfect human that I am. I don't just trust all my goodness. I don't just trust my strategic planning skills and my great speaking. I don't just trust my communication with others. I don't just trust that. I trust all of the brokenness. I trust all of the imperfection. I trust that too. I love her. She gives me freedom. She gives me the ability to grow. And with all of that, I'll make a decision. I'll lean into it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Can I ask you a
Yeah.
tough question? How do you trust the broken part of you? Because if you said it was a choice and you have chosen to be in a relationship that broke you, how do you trust that?
Yeah.
One of the biggest fallacies is that relationships shouldn't be work. Say what? We put time, effort, and hard work into growing our careers or our business, but love should just happen? After 20 years of being married, all starts with being willing to ask and answer hard questions. I have a free downloadable PDF for you for a happy, successful, lasting love. Click the link below for free access to the most important questions you must ask your partner PDF.
Through empathy and through compassion, that when I've gotten into a relationship that didn't serve me, I didn't get in it to torture myself. I didn't get in it to have pain. I go back and I look at whenever I made a poor decision, I go back and look at the feeling I felt right before that decision. And I work to heal that feeling. I don't work to heal the decision, because the decision is a decision. I work to heal the feeling that led to the decision. So if you want to make better, stronger decisions, look at the way you feel before the decision. And if you want to know why did I make those decisions, look at the way you felt before. So the brokenness is the swallowed by loneliness. Feeling like loneliness is forever. I go and I heal that. I go and I help her not feel broken in her loneliness. I go back to the feeling of scared. I go back and I help her to replace the fear with some level of strategy. Whether it's afraid of not having enough money, whether it's afraid of being stuck, whatever that feeling is, I look for the feeling. I'm feeling based. And so I go, what was I feeling that caused me to make that choice to get in that relationship that I knew didn't serve me? What was that feeling that caused me to stay in that relationship that didn't honor me? And
What
I
was your
know
conclusion?
for me, a lot of my feelings have always been scared. And what do I give? Why? It's why I'm a planner now. I plan because planning is my safety net. Having a plan is my safety net. Because if I don't have a plan, then I have to make it all up. And when I make it all up, I'm in my emotions while I'm making it up. But if I have a plan, then I can change the plan. I can modify the plan. But I made the plan inside my logic and my thoughts. My best decisions come from my logic and thought, and they're fueled by my emotions. My best decisions are not made from my emotions. They're made from logic and fact and information, and they're fueled by my emotions. But when when my emotions are in the driver's seat, I'm always making a decision that's not well thought out. And so I push my emotions to the passenger seat. I push my logic, my fact, and the information and history to the driver's seat. And then I let the emotions come with me. And so when I look back at that, I go, what was the emotion? What did she need? I live in personal development work. You and I, we live in it. I live in it so that I know how to handle and harness my emotion. It's not okay to let my emotions drive all the time. It's not okay. And I used to be that person. I mean, I'm down. I'm that emotion driven chick because I'm passionate. I'm on fire and I'm this and I'm that. And the reality is that I could go further if I'm balancing what's logical with what's historical. I look at my history. I let my history help me. I let it help inform my now. What have I historically done in moments like this? What's been my pattern? Who am I? I'm not accidentally falling into mess anymore. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I get in my own stuff, but a lot of it now is not because I was emotional and out of control and I didn't get it or my emotions were driving me. I don't give Lisa that out anymore because she's grown. And you know, there's a freedom, there's an additional freedom being a grown ass woman. Excuse the way I say it, but that's like, and I'm a GAW. And as a GAW, I go, hold on, you've been here before. Hold on, you got evidence. You got evidence of how you show up here. So I know how to ask my husband for what I need. I know how to ask my community for what I need. I know if I'm by myself more than 30 days on the road, I know I spiral into loneliness. So I don't go on the road by myself. I pay that extra money, fly somebody with me. That's easy. It's too easy to avoid the situation. It's too easy to avoid the fallout. So what makes me fall out? What happens? I know if I don't talk to my husband on an ongoing basis, my chatter starts kicking in and I start going, is this going to work? Because I've been alone longer than I've been in this partnership. And so I out myself. I don't know if you out yourself, but I out myself. I told my husband, Marcellus, when we first got together, I said, I don't want to be anywhere but with you. So if I ever talk like I don't want to be with you, remind me of this moment, this day, this time, because I know I want to spend the rest of my life with you. But I can roll like a solo chick. I've been going solo long. And so don't let me. So I out myself. I speak to my patterns. I speak to my behaviors. I speak to that thing before it occurs and ask you to hold me accountable to what I said I wanted when I forget, when my ego forgets, when my she-go forgets, when my insecurity forgets. Because my fear of you abandoning me can make me push you away. Please don't let her show up. And when she shows up, call me on it. Remind me of this moment at 4 o'clock on, choose the date and the time, specificity, call me on my crap. And so, but that's GAW move. That's a grown ass woman saying, don't let me get in the way of our greatness. Don't let me get in the way of what I said I wanted. Because you can get in your own way of what you say you want. And it normally is a fear from the past or a fear of the future. I tried to push Marcellus away so many times because I was afraid that he would leave me eventually, so that I pushed him away. And thank God he was like, I'm not going anywhere. And so, yeah, reckoning with the small parts of you. My friend Sean Smith says, reckoning with your enlightenment and your endarkenment.
I love that.
Like, if you have stuff that's just crap, lay it out there.
How did you allow yourself to develop that open vulnerability,
Yeah.
especially when you come from a place where you haven't trusted yourself
Yeah.
before, where it's been abused
Yeah.
before, to be able to say that, because that is
Yeah.
beautiful. I hear it so freaking loud and clear. And when it's with that right person, same with me and Tom, when it's with the right person, it's amazing.
Yeah.
But a lot of people would then use your vulnerability against you. It becomes a weapon.
Yeah. So I've done a lot of personal development. I don't want to sit here and sound like some evolved thought leader with no issues. That crap is not me. I got mama issues. I got a beautiful son. I got 2 bonus children. You know, I inherited 3 dogs. I got all kind of stuff. I got daughter stuff that I work on all the time to honor my parents, husband and wife, learning how to be a life partner to someone, learning how to not just roll solo. So I don't want to ever come across ever as someone who professes to have arrived. If my fear doesn't leave, I learned to strap it in the seatbelt and it has to come with me. I learned that in those moments when I start doubting because I'm playing so big in the world, like when I keep playing bigger and bigger, I get a fear storm again. I go, what the heck? This fear storm is back again? Then I go, okay, if you're going to be here, then you got to come because I'm not stopping. So I kept working on me. Like I do these things, Lise, where I complete these sentences. If you really knew me, you know that I. And in that moment, I let myself go, what's really on the inside that you might not see on the camera right now. But if you really knew me, you would know that, you know, I'm learning how to be a bonus mom. And I don't know where my boundaries start and end. If you really knew me, you'd know that I want to be closer to my son. He's married and moved away, and I want to figure out how how to be his close friend. I'm a good friend, but I selfishly want to be a really, really close friend, and I'm figuring that out. So I do these sentence stems. Sometimes I feel. And when I do sometimes I feel, I can't talk about my thoughts. I have to talk about my feelings. And the agreement is I can't justify my feelings. I have to just let the feelings sit right there as if it dropped right here on the carpet in between us. So you would hear me say, sometimes I feel overwhelmed. And sometimes I feel frustrated that I feel overwhelmed again. Sometimes I feel like a kid in the candy store. I get to live my dreams. Sometimes I feel guilty for my wealth. When I look at my family and their journey and their struggles, I feel wealth guilt. Sometimes I feel overjoyed with the opportunity to do God's work the way I do it. Sometimes I feel nervous of all the weights that sit on my shoulder that connect to my family, that I can do it all and that'll last. So what I'm doing with you right now, in front of you right now, is I'm doing the work I do by myself. I let myself feel, I process. So I rarely get to that Coke bottle. You know, if you shake a Coke bottle, you feel the pressure, pressure, pressure. I don't get there often because I'm always going, if you really knew me, you know that sometimes I feel. I'm happiest when I can communicate better by. What I know I deserve is. My truth that I feel right now is. All of those sentences all relieve the pressure. And they also let me put my truth in front of me. So you ask me, how did I get to that? It's because I kept going inward, asking Lisa, how do you feel? What are you embarrassed about right now? I'll say, I'm ashamed that. I'll say that because I want to out my shame. I don't want my shame to take up real estate in my body. There's no room for shame, blame, guilt, regret, and anger to take up real estate in my body. You might come through me, but you need to keep going. You can't take out real estate. And so that's how I continue to stay present with what Lisa's feeling. I process me. I do to me what I'm doing to others in my workshops. Like I do it to myself. I don't just do other people. I'm not just going to facilitate your transformation and I'm stuck. And we got to watch out when our lives get big. We got to watch out when our lives are sexy and amazing and people can admire it, because we can stay here for a long time and people still try to catch up to us. We can stay here for a long time and people still admire us for years to come. And I'm a river. I'm not a lake. I'm always flowing, always growing, always moving. I want to always be in movement, Lisa. And even if it means that I'm constantly doing the work on me while I'm doing it with others. And I'm okay with that. I fought for her. I fought for this chick. And she ain't perfect. And she got a lot of things that she's always get to work on. But I love her evolution. Like I'm sold out on the woman I've worked to become. I'm grateful for the woman I've got to become. And I love helping other women unleash that, because there is no potion lotion. There's no sprinkle fairy dust. There is no magic wand, which means all of us can have it. All of us can get there. Our journeys will be different. Our paths may not be the same. When we get there will not equal each other's, but we all get it. It's our birthright. This joy, this happiness, this contentment, this peace of mind is our birthright. And I'm willing to fight for it, cry for it, speak up for it, sleep for it, pray for it, meditate for it. I'm willing. I'm willing to not worry about how inconveniencing it is to get it again. I'm willing to be out of it so I understand what being in it feels like. I'm willing to recognize when I'm out of it. So I'm in tune I'm in tune at a cellular level with me. And it took a long time to get there because I'm a server of everyone else. Want everyone else to be happy. So it took a long time for me to understand what does it feel like to be in tune and tapped in to my vibration so that I then can tap into your vibration and his vibration and her vibration and her vibration. Like if you're aligned to me, aligned with self first, then I could be more available to you.
So beautiful, girl. Reminds me, I heard you say, I'll never give from my cup. I'll give from my overfull of my cup. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. It means that this cup, everything in it, your body, everything in it, this is for you. That's for you. And I use the cup metaphorically, but it came from serving from a place of depletion. And as women, we will give what we need all day long. We will serve when we're bone tired. We will say yes when we need to say no. We will not draw healthy lines in the sand. I say if someone keeps crossing your line in the sand, it is not because they're rude. It's because your line isn't deep enough in the sand. It's because you've negotiated the line so many times that now the line is blurry. Now the wind has blown the line and no one can see the line. And you feel as if you're suffering in silence because no one's honoring your line. It's because you didn't honor your line, sis. And I only know that because I didn't honor my line. And I was serving and giving, but I had this mild to moderate sense of resentment. It was submerged undercurrent smile base. It was this kind of, yes, I can help you. Yes, I can help you. Sure, call on me. It was that kind of service. And it was unsustainable. And so many women, we are serving from our cups and our bone dry cup at that, and our half full cup at that. And I'm a true believer. I'm not going to serve from my cup. I'm going to pour my cup until it's an overflow, and I'm going to serve you from my saucer. And I can keep serving you from my saucer, sis, because my saucer is everything for you. But what's in my cup, that's for me.
I love that analogy so much. And I want to go back to what you were saying about shame, of how you just voice it.
Yeah.
Why do you think so many of us hold back on that shame and don't voice it? Is it to almost like hope that it will go away? Because to your point, I think once you speak it, because where you've gotten with your husband is so damn beautiful, where you can be open and honest and not be fearful about being that transparent with somebody in case they use it against you. Going back to that, people can use vulnerability as a weapon. And so that self-care that you were saying, that you do the internal work and you speak it, that really made me realize, I think that's a sticking point. Like what holds people back from being able to give over in a relationship or give over to somebody else? Why do you think we hold back?
Because we don't have a safe space. We haven't established a safe space. And I do this in our workshops. We started in our Motivating the Teen Spirit workshop 26 years ago. 26 years ago, wow. And it's because we don't have a safe space, because we don't know how to establish a safe space. So may I give you the 3 agreements that we use to establish a safe space? I would invite every sister listening to this and looking at us right now to immediately establish your safe space. And the first thing in a safe space is to ask the person that you're talking to, will they agree to reserve all judgment? And a safe space has no rules, it has agreements, because rules are meant to be broken. People say that all the time, but agreements can be agreed upon. So ask for the agreement, can you reserve all judgment? And if you can reserve all judgment of you, and I reserve all judgment of you, and we both agree to reserve all judgment of ourselves. Because the person that judges us the most is ourselves. So that's the first agreement, is the agreement to reserve all judgment of you and of myself. The second agreement that I say would help you to create a safe space, which will help you to be more vulnerable, which will help you to understand and believe that it won't be used against you. The second agreement is the agreement of no repercussions, which means what's said here stays here. And if you bring this conversation up later, you only bring it up to lift me up. Imagine if you had that agreement with your siblings, or you had that agreement with your significant other, or you had that agreement with your children or your friends or your coworkers. I establish this safe space everywhere I go. I establish it with my Fortune 500 clients. I establish it with my families when I'm working with family coaching. I establish it everywhere. And something happens. The bar of listening and the bar of being present rises. We've never raised the bar to be with each other, to listen to each other, to communicate to each other. So the first agreement is the agreement to reserve all judgment. The second agreement is the agreement that there will be no repercussions. What's said here stays here. And you can bring it up later, but you only bring it up later to lift me up. And the third agreement is the agreement of unconditional love. And most people have unconditional love misunderstood. They see it as fluffy and flowy and wah, but unconditional love is messy. Unconditional love has thorns in it. Unconditional love actually says, will you agree to love me through my ugly? Will you agree to love me through my righteousness? Will you agree to love me through my defensiveness? Will you agree to love me through when my insecurities come screaming out of me? Will you agree to love me when I'm actually being unlovable? See, unconditional love, people will go, oh, unconditional love.
Doesn't matter what you do. It's fine.
Yeah. No, conditional love is fluffy. Because conditional love is when I love you on the condition that you agree with me. I love you when we get along. Unconditional love is loving me when all those other things are happening. And so you ask, how do you feel safe? How do you feel safe enough to be vulnerable? Ask for a safe space. Make the safe space. You can say, is this a safe space? And someone says, yes. I like to go a little deeper. Hello. Let's make this a safe space. And if someone can agree to reserve all judgment of me, provide me no repercussions and unconditional love, then I choose what I say. But if you can agree to those things with me, now my soul and my cells feel like they can go further. And so I am a big person of establish the safe space that you need. Establish the safe space that will help you. When my son was 13, I taught my son this when he was 8. When he was 13, we're sitting in the lounge area at the Marriott Hotel on Century Boulevard. He says, Mom, I need a safe space. I said, you do? He's 13, so I'm nervous. He said, yes. He said, do you agree to not judge me? I said, yes. He goes, please raise your hand. I said, okay. He goes, no repercussions? I said, yes. He said, unconditional love? I said, yes. I said, okay, tell me. He goes, wait, I have one more request. I said, but it's only 3 agreements. And then he said something that I never forgot. He goes, Mom, I'm allowed to determine what makes me feel safe. He said, and I need one more agreement. I said, okay. He goes, do you agree not to tell Grandma? And he knew what he needed. But that statement, Mom, I get to determine what makes me feel safe. We're having conversations with the people we love, and we have all of this tension, all of this, I hope they don't tell anyone. Just ask before you say anything. Ask for a safe space and ask for them to agree. And I believe our relationships and our communication will definitely become a lot more richer. Ask it on a date. If you're dating, ask for a safe space. And then have real authentic conversations that actually go somewhere. We're full of so many meaningless conversations, but that's because we're conversing with protection. We're trying to stay protected while we're trying to connect. You can't stay protected and get connected at the same time. To be connected requires vulnerability. To truly feel connected. The reason why our friendship is so deep, and oh, by the way, y'all, our friendship is deep. But the reason why our friendship is deep is because we allowed ourselves to be vulnerable together. But we allowed ourselves to be vulnerable because we established a safe space. Maybe not with those agreements, but we really kind of embedded those agreements when we were together and we had that epic week experience. And so I invite you, if you're listening to me, you want a stronger connection. Ask for no judgment, no repercussions, and unconditional love. And then share something that's worth sharing. Share something that would sit over here in the shame corner. Pull it out. because shame can only grow and shame can only be powerful if you keep it in the dark. Shame loses its power when you shed light on it.
Now, that's so just gorgeous is the word that came to mind. So beautiful. And the fact that your son added one, I love that, because I think we all come with a lot of base assumptions,
Yeah.
right? And so the base assumption may be very different from the person that you're talking to. And so vocalizing them and then asking that is so powerful. It always takes that one moment, though, of taking that chance, taking that, risk, if you will.
Yeah.
How do you work through that potential risk or taking the chance? Because you move, I mean, just take your story. This is, once you got married, but you moved all the way to the Bahamas, so uprooting your life, taking that chance, speaking to somebody on a date that you're dating and saying, I need you to hold me, to greet me, to have these agreements, is all taking a chance.
Big chance. I moved to the Bahamas before we got married, before we got engaged. I was scared, but one, I trusted my bounce back. I wanted it to go good, but I trusted me if it went south. I knew I can get up. That was number one. That helped me get on the plane. I wasn't planning for it not to go well. I just trusted there's life after if it doesn't go. So get on the plane. So that's key, to really tap into your ability to bounce back from any of it. I just believe that. I'm not saying I'm invincible, but I am saying after all these years, I've learned I can bounce back. So I was nervous. I didn't know what to say to him. I realized that I'm a serial entrepreneur and I can totally talk about transformation.
In front of like tens and hundreds of thousands of people.
Easy. 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 Television. Easy. Anywhere. Stadiums. All around the world. But I didn't know what to say to this man. I didn't know. I was so vulnerable. There's so much in my heart. I moved to the Bahamas. I'm in this little 2-bedroom Airbnb and he comes to visit me and I just go, hi. And so I got some conversation cards. I got conversation cards that were based in transformation, authenticity, and transparency. So they weren't topical. They really asked questions. And I was honest with them. I said, I don't know how to connect at the level that I want to connect at right now in my life because I've been so focused on parenting and being a CEO. I do those really pretty well. I would say my son would give me a pass and my company would give me a pass. So I need to learn how to date like this because I knew this was long term. This wasn't just, there was something at stake. You know what I mean? The more there is at stake, the more wonky I get, right? And I realized I didn't know how to flirt, that I hadn't flirted with anyone under 70 and over 7. So I was like, you have to be over 70 and under 7 and I can flirt really good with you. And so I realized that my flirting muscle was off. I didn't like my come hither had gone there. I just had the muscle, but I knew it was there. I knew she was there. I knew the woman that wanted sensuality and love and long-term intimacy and connection and best friend. I knew she was there. I could feel her in my belly. I just needed to let her know she was safe to come out. And so I told him that. I said, I haven't done it like this in a long time. And my running shoes stay on. I find reasons to be busy because busy is safe for me. But I don't want to be busy. I want to be in connection with you. And then he said, I don't know how to do it either. I'm a newscaster. I know how to be on television, do the news. I know how to father. But I want you. I waited 8 years for you. So we both just set in the, let's learn how to do it in our 50s. We both had dated a lot in our 20s and 30s, and both of us had kind of been on hiatus in our 40s. And so it was a new season. It was more at stake. And the most freeing thing we did was say, let's get some help. So we got these little cute cards And it's the and game, and we would do the cards together. They ask questions like, what childhood experience shaped you? Were your parents intimate? Did they show, this was a beautiful one for he and I. Did your parents show affection in front of you, and how did it shape you? And I had been feeling like, wow, if he likes me, I can't tell too much because he doesn't hold my hand. He doesn't say, I love you. He doesn't kiss me. He kisses me, but he doesn't offer the kiss. Everything was me. And so I'm really in my head. And I asked this one question: did your parents show intimacy in front of you? How did it shape you? And he said, I never heard my parents say I love you to each other. I never saw my parents kiss. And it shaped me because I don't know how to do it. And I went, oh, so what was shaping up to be resentment was instantly replaced with compassion, instantly replaced with understanding. I was like, oh my God, oh, that makes sense. It makes sense that it's foreign to you. It makes sense that when I would say I love you to him, he would look like this. Okay. Oh, now it makes sense. It's foreign to you. And so I said, are you open to learn? He goes, I want to learn.
My jaw is on the floor. Yeah, so yeah, like the base assumption that he doesn't love you if he doesn't say it, if he doesn't hold your hand, it means he doesn't love you. We make up the story in our head.
So first of all, I'm dealing with my fears, and my fears are fueling my thoughts. Like, is this real? Is it going to stay? Am I going to have to go back home?
Right.
I'm in a foreign country. I don't want another failed relationship. Oh my God, I gotta have, and all of this stuff. So on top of that, if he's not holding my hand and he's not like groping me, like I wanted him to grope me, I wanted him to accost me, I wanted him to say, I love you none of that. And his way of saying I love you was to cook for me and to be there right for me. Like, it was different. I want touch, and he wasn't so much, and I want audio. And so I learned that about him. Then we both read the 5 love languages together, and we would just sit beside each other and read. And whenever he would go, that means we would close our books and we would talk about the Whenever I would go, we would close our books and we would talk about my. So we just started learning, because he didn't know what his love language was. He didn't know. And he was like, oh, I actually like touch. I prefer touch. And I was like, you do? So as we discovered more of ourselves as a partner, you can know yourself. I knew myself as a woman. I knew myself as a mother, knew myself as a businesswoman. I didn't know myself as a partner, because when I had lovers, that was easy. And so I knew how to manage casual relationships. I'll call it that, casual. I knew this wasn't casual. And we were navigating through that. He knew this wasn't casual. So that required a whole nother level of that. So I learned how I was as a partner. And so once we learned that, we brought in words and explanations and personality tests and partnership tests and questions. And that sparked. And I would sit and listen, Lisa. I would listen to him answer one question from one card and fall more in love with him. And I realized it was a jump starter for him. He needed a jump starter, and I needed a jump starter. And I honestly believe that seeking out ways to connect and communicate and share was how we got to our engagement. Because I wasn't gonna say yes to him if I didn't know how to make this connection. And I didn't know how to make the connection by myself, because there was so much at stake. I loved him so much. I wanted it so to work. And I had fear in the background too. So I just learned how to support someone to love me. I had to learn how to support someone to love me. I think there are times when we make loving us hard. And
What do you mean by that?
A former boyfriend of mine who became a good friend said, Lisa, you're not easy to date. And I said, why? I don't think I'm high maintenance. He goes, you're not. You're really easy. You're really easy as a person. He said, but when a guy sees you, he sees a cute smile, maybe a cute butt. He sees you in your heels and he just wants to date you. He goes, but then when he goes on the journey with you, he has to transform. I said, why? He said, because you're always transforming. He said, you live in transformation. You live in self-discovery. You live in evolution. So your partner has to live in that with you. And he didn't sign up for that. I said, what? He said, he signed up for your cute ass. He signed up for the voluptuous breast. He signed up for the delicious lips. He signed up for the, show-stopping smile. He signed up for the funny personality. And then he falls for you. And it's easy to fall for you. And now he has to live in transformation and personal development. And he has to always evolve. That was sobering. It was sobering for me to accept that I wasn't always easy to date. I'm a piece of work. I'm a piece of work that requires movement, requires evolution. I'm a seeker and a searcher and a discoverer. And I could choose someone for love and they not know how to do all of that. And I'm so grateful to my friend. I'm so grateful to him, Dana Johnson. I'll say his name because he loved me enough to tell me the truth. He said, be gracious with the man you choose and invite him to evolve with you. Don't force him.
That's so powerful, but like that growth thing is when I get asked, so we just celebrate our 21-year wedding anniversary. Thank you. Oh, so happy and just in love with the man more than ever. And people keep asking about the secret to, marriage. And I said, the truth is, to me, they have to have a growth mindset.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like, they have to have a growth mindset.
Yeah.
It's not even about the communication.
Yeah.
That is a massive part of it.
Yeah.
But the growth, because if you're looking to grow, if you want to
Yeah.
be a better person every single day, like the person I want to be, like I know where I want to go.
Yeah.
So it takes time, it takes
Yeah.
skills, it takes
Yeah.
evolution, it takes transformation. And so being with someone that supports you in that
Yeah.
growth and is on their own growth journey
Yeah.
is imperative, because I went from a stay-at-home wife for 8 years, cooking and cleaning for my husband, to now saying, sorry, babe, I love you, but you're on your own. I'm going to go do this entrepreneur stuff.
Yeah.
And that evolution for me, if I wasn't with someone that has also a growth mindset,
Yeah.
they wouldn't have appreciated
Yeah.
the transformation I was making. And so to your point, it is difficult, but I actually think that it's a trait that is imperative, I believe, if you're with someone or if you're the type of person that prides themselves on growth and transformation.
Right. It has to be an embedded characteristic in them. My husband we're very different. We're very different in a beautiful way. And on our wedding day, in his vows, he said, I'll be the lighthouse to help you find your way home. And I'll be the string to your kite as you soar the world. And so who he is steady. And yet since we've been married, he's gotten certified in 7 different forms of health and nutrition and fitness and wellness. And so I see that we're very different, but we're on the same foundation of growth. He is an anchor and I'm wings. And what I realize is when I gave myself permission to not hold my future hostage to my past, and I'll explain that. When it comes to love, your brain only has history that it can go back and remember. And when you're in your 50s or 40s or 30s, you have history behind you of possibly have history of dating, relationships. And I realized that my brain was trying to keep me safe. while my heart was trying to find love. And so I asked, honestly, you can call me a little cuckoo, but I processed Lisa. I talked to her. So I asked myself, I said, can you give yourself permission to trust again as if you were never hurt, and to use the discernment that you now have because you navigated through the hurt? So listen to those juxtaposed things. Lisa, can you give yourself permission to trust again as if you were never hurt, while using the discernment, by using the judgment that you developed from all of your past hurt? Can you get to that point? Again, you asked me several times about different things, and my answer was I kept doing the work. What does that look like? I got in the mirror and I completed 3 sentences every day. It took me about 20 minutes, and I learned the hard way, don't do it before work. Because this is when I have a job. Do it in the evening when you got some space, because a lot of emotions come up. The first thing that I did was I completed the sentence, Lisa, I'm proud that you. I found 7 different things to celebrate myself for, because we're all adults. We're all 3-year-olds trapped in adults' bodies. What gets celebrated gets repeated. And we're under-celebrated. We are under-celebrated. We got to wait a whole freaking year to get celebrated again on our birthday, right? We stop having graduations. We stop, we're under-celebrated as a people, which is why when we're acknowledged, it feels so awkward. You want to stop feeling awkward when you're acknowledged? Be acknowledged more. Throw self-acknowledgement parties. Invite somebody to the doggone party. So I celebrated myself every morning for 7 different things by saying, Lisa, I'm proud that you. Some days, Lisa, it was just, Lisa, I'm proud that you got out of bed today. Lisa, I'm proud that you made those 2 sales phone calls, because you know how nervous sales makes you. Lisa, I'm proud that you fixed Jelani a healthy meal today and no beanies and weenies today. Lisa, I just found 7 different things to celebrate myself for. So that's number 1. Celebrate yourself. Say your name. I celebrate you for 7 different endings. The second one was super important and super hard. I said, Lisa, I forgive you for. Every day, I cut the shackles of blame, shame, guilt, regret, and anger. Key things is blame and shame. Every day, Lisa, I forgive you. Lisa, I forgive you for lowering your integrity bar because you were lonely. Lisa, I forgive you for beating yourself up so much that you accepted the first man that came to you because you felt you were unworthy. Lisa, I forgive you for gaining 100 pounds. Lisa, I forgive you for having a baby before you got married. I mean, I forgave the big stuff, Lisa, and I forgave the small stuff, but I had so much garbage. I had so much shadow and shade and stuff, secrecy that didn't affect anybody but me. But I didn't want it anymore. Lisa, I forgive you. I forgive you. I forgive you for lying to your father for 3 years on where your son's father was when he was in prison. I forgive you for saying that he was out of town. I forgive you for feeling shame about his choice to do something criminal, not yours. I forgive you for living in shame. Lisa, I went down the list. I purged every day, 7 different things. And then the last sentence was, Lisa, I commit to you that. Every day I made 7 commitments to myself. Lisa, I commit to you that today you'll say yes only when you want to say yes. And you'll say no when you feel like a freaking no. Lisa, I commit to you that today I won't dim my light. Today I'll let the whole light shine, even if it makes other people feel uncomfortable. Lisa, I commit to you that I'll look in the mirror and not beat you up. I'll just see you for you. I just won't beat you up today. Lisa, I commit to you that I'll look at your body today with no clothes on, and I'll find one good thing about it. And I commit you that tomorrow I'll work to find 2. I did it every day. Every day I said, Lisa, I'm proud that I found 7 reasons to celebrate myself. Lisa, I forgive you for. I found 7 shackles of blame, shame, guilt, and regret to cut. And Lisa, I commit to you. I found 7 things to commit to myself every day. You want to begin to ground yourself in that feeling of solitude? Do that. Now, I did it every day for 6 months, but I was trying to save my life. You may not be there. I was trying to save Lisa's life. I was trying to find Lisa's life again. I was trying to find my light again. And by doing that, I turned my crawl into a walk, and then I turned my walk into a run, and then I turned my run into a soar. I still do that exercise. It has now been 27 years. And I still do that. I don't do it anymore for 6 months because I was getting out of a place. It turned my depression around. Now I do it as a way of purging, as a prayer of staying center with me, staying true to me. What unconsciously have you not celebrated yourself for that you need to celebrate yourself for? Don't wait for someone else to celebrate you. Throw your own self a party. We're so under-celebrated. We're waiting for other people. And then the second piece is, don't walk with the shame, Lisa. Don't walk with the shame. I forgive you for. When I tell you that second sentence is so powerful, I ran into my abuser. 13 years later, I ran into my former fiance who had abused me. And he came to me with his wife. And they both were crying, asking for my forgiveness. She said, can you please free my husband and give my husband back to me? He is riddled with shame of what he did to you. And when I tell you, Lisa, the best feeling on the planet was because I had done that mirror work and I forgave myself, which allowed me the space to forgive him. I stood in front of my monster, who I considered to be my monster, and I saw him cry. And I realized that monsters don't cry. No monster I've ever met cried. And I realized my monster wasn't a monster. He was a tormented man. And I felt so good, Lisa, so good, that I can stand in front of this man and this woman who were fighting for their love and their healing. And I could tell him, I've already forgiven you. Go in peace. Go live in peace. And he sobbed. He broke down in front of me, 6'9", 240 pounds. He broke down and sobbed tears of gratitude. I said, I forgive you. I've already forgiven you. Go with peace. Go be with peace. Go love your wife. You owe me nothing. You owe her. Give her what she deserves. Give yourself what you deserve. Forgive you first. Oh, there's so much in forgiveness. There's so much in mirror work forgiveness. Mirror work forgiveness consistently will dissolve the shame. Mirror work forgiveness.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you hadn't have done that, well, how do you think you would have felt if you saw him?
I wouldn't have been able to talk to him. I would have been riddled with shame and fear. I wouldn't have been able to carefront him. I didn't confront him. I carefronted him. I wouldn't have had the empathy and the compassion. Forgiveness is the doorway to so much growth. Forgiveness of self and forgiveness of someone else. Now remember, forgiveness does not pardon the behavior. Forgiveness does not accept the treatment. Forgiveness does not right a wrong. It doesn't make a wrong right. Forgiveness is not about a past behavior being proved right or wrong. Forgiveness is about your current space, the real estate in your body being opened up for love. So many times we want love, but there's no space in our body and our energy source for love. You want love, open up space for love. You want forgiveness, open up space for forgiveness. You may have to let something go. I had to let go of shame, blame, guilt, regret, and anger. I had to let go of some of that. You won't let it go in one day. You won't let it go in one book. You won't let it go in one show. It's a daily action. I was in it daily with myself. No show, no performance, no lights, no camera, a bathroom mirror, and a lot of Kleenex, and a lot of snotty noses, and a lot of ugly crying. I mean, I did the ugly cry, Lisa. Some of my I forgive you for was inaudible. It was like, forgive you for inaudible. No one could understand what I was saying, but I knew what I was saying. I did it when my son was asleep. I would go out, take a long walk when no one was around. I didn't want any distraction so I can get it all out. I was evicting the anger, evicting the shame, evicting the blame. You can no longer take up real estate in my body. There's a calling on my life, and I want to live it out. I don't want to be a portion of who I could be. I don't want to be a part of who I could become. I want to see who she is. I want to see who she's becoming. And anything that's not in alignment with the woman I'm becoming, you got to go. Evict it.
And did you say then, this is the person I want to become, and then backtrack?
Not first. At first, I didn't have that awareness. When your head is underwater, you can't think about all you're going to do with your oxygen. All you want is to breathe. So the first part of my journey, no, I wasn't running toward who I was becoming. I was outrunning who I'd been. She had to die away. And I didn't hate her. She was driven by fear and insecurity. She was driven by lack. She was driven by scarcity. She was driven by hurt. All of her soil was stuff that was, and I said, I accept her. I bring her with me. She ain't going nowhere. That's my sister soldier. That's my sister soldier. But I needed her to allow me to plant some new things. So the initial part, Lisa, no, I didn't even have a clear vision of the woman I was becoming. I didn't have a clear vision of who I could become. I was so lassoed, so tight. I was choked by who I had been. And all I wanted initially was the hand off my throat so I could breathe and choose. So much of who we are, it wasn't chosen by us. We are a culmination of our culture, of our geographical origin, of our religious background. We're a culmination of the money we had or didn't have, the decisions that were made based on money to keep it or to get it or to lose it. So much of who I was because I was born and raised in South Central LA, because I was raised between the Harlem Crip 30s and the Rolling 60s, because I had 3 fights a week to get home from school, because I was on government's assistance, because I was functionally dyslexic, because I was dark with full lips and kinky hair and round hips, because there was no space for who I could become. I needed to first own who I was and stop being a victim of who I was. Stand on my blackness, own my kinky hair and my full lips and my round hips. See her, love her, embrace my South Central, and not be ashamed that I'm the South Central that was always on the news. Understand that my mom and my dad made $1 go in 10 different directions, and be okay with that. I had to first own all that. So no, Lisa, when I first did it, I wasn't focused on who I was becoming. I had to first just accept who I was and not be a victim to who I was. So much of who we are, we throw back to our parents or our community or where we were raised. You don't know, but you don't know about my past. I wanted to not stand in my story. I wanted to stand on my story. I wanted my story to be my platform, not my sinking sand, not my cement. I wanted it to be something that I can launch from, not try to run from. And so it took a while. When I first was doing it, I was just trying to get out of the sinking sand of being a Black woman in South Central LA who's now a single mother whose father's in prison. Hell, I had all that. I just didn't want to be a victim to that. You know what I mean? It was like I had all these reasons to be mediocre. All these acceptable societal, acceptable reasons to be mediocre. Oh, you Black woman. Oh, you're a woman. Oh, you born in the hood. Oh, you had a baby before you got married. Oh, your son's father's in prison. Oh, you're on government assistance. Yeah, no, I wanted to use all that as fuel, and it took some. Everyone has a story. That's mine. Everyone. You have a story. Our cameraman has a story. Everyone in this office has a story. Everyone watching has a story. I just want to make sure my story was serving me and not serving me a sentence of being sentenced to my story. I wanted my story to serve me to who I was becoming.
God damn, girl, that was so strong. So I'm such an advocate for the same thing of like, you're an adult now, you know, the past doesn't define you. You can use it. I love the whole platform analogy. That's so beautiful. And anytime I talk about anything on this show from a personal experience, my mum watches it all the time. And
Hi, Mom.
I know. And sometimes she, you know, I'll talk about, you know, my eating issues, and the reason why I was so, I had such a bad relationship with food was I watched my mom borderline anorexic growing up. And I'm like, Mom, I don't blame you, because, you know, she feels a bit of the guilt. And I'm like, no, Mom. Like in my adulthood, I decided to then be, to have a bad relationship with food. And so you cannot beat yourself up. I have to do the internal work. So and it empowers me, to be honest. That's where I found it.
And I have to let it out. Yeah.
I used to actually like the blame, like, or the guilt or the shame, I should say, of like, well, you know, I was brought up like this. You know, it actually made me, it relinquished the responsibility, which, until I had a growth mindset, actually it soothed me. And then once I had the growth mindset and adopted, hang on, is this serving you? Like, just ask yourself this, is this serving you? Yes or no? I freaking love that. And you dropped it a bit earlier, a few times actually, where you said that your husband was pursuing you for 8 years. And so with everything that you just said, like how hard it must have been, God, like just freaking how hard. The things, you had every right to succumb to the expectations that maybe people put on you of where you grew up, having your child, you know, out of wedlock, all of that. So having done all that work, and then having somebody pursue you, having these relationships where they weren't right for you, and then having Marcella, you know, reach out year after year after year. Do you think you would be together if he hadn't? Like, how do you feel about you pursuing men versus men pursuing you?
Yeah.
And then why did it take 8 years? And what was the final moment where you realized that he was right for you?
What up, homie? I got something free and new to share with you right now.
How often are you visited by that negative voice in your head telling you that you're not smart enough, that you're not good enough, experienced enough, not fill in the blank? One of the most powerful things you can learn to do in life is to turn that negative voice into your bestie. And I want to teach you how to do that and so much more in my 4 steps to becoming confident workshop. And guys, the most amazing thing is you can actually register for completely free for this workshop. So click the link on your screen and I'll see you on the inside.
So Marcellus and I, when we met, it was instant energy, and instant discounting. We talked for 11 and a half hours when we first met, because I was leaving the next day. So we decided to be radical. And he's navigating. He's not as shy as he used to be, but he's not a man of he doesn't pursue very much. And I honestly discounted that he could want me because at the time I was 100 pounds overweight. And he has a 8-pack. You know, he just won. He just won the Masters competition last year for the Bahamas National Bodybuilding Championship. So, you know, he's championship. So on an unconscious level, I disqualified. Nah, he wouldn't. And he's Caribbean. He's very attractive. He's a newscaster. He's physically fit. He's gorgeous. I don't feel like the drama. I gave it an excuse. And once a month, he messaged me, hello. And then the next month, he would message me, how are you? And then the next month, he would message me, checking on you and Jelani. He had these 3 lines he would always do, and he rotated those 3 lines every month. And I didn't realize that he was doing it every month because I wasn't paying a lot of attention to it. I discounted him. This guy has a bunch of girlfriends. He's probably married. He says he only has 2 children. He probably has 9, 7, poor 7 kids. They're not being, literally, I would say this, those poor 7 kids are not being claimed by their father. And I kept saying this. And if you keep saying something long enough, you'll make it your truth. Mm-hmm. And so I made him a player. I made him not serious. I made him, you know, a womanizer or a player, at least a player. And it became true. So it got to a point where I would see his message. I go, oh, there's the Bahamian player. Now, no evidence. He's done nothing to prove this. But it's my limiting belief that he would be serious about me. And I also knew that I didn't have the bandwidth at that time to give a relationship what I wanted to give it, because I was really building my business. And my son was, I think, 13 or so at the time. And my son he doesn't jump into social circles easy. So I didn't want to even think about having to move him or meetings. So I had all these reasons why not. And one night I was in the shower and I was praying to God for a consistent man. I said, God, just send me a consistent man, a man of his word. And I got out the shower and my phone pinged, hi. And I went. And so I decided to read all of his text. And I realized that every month for 8 years that he's sat on the sidelines and just said hi. And I'm sure, and he dated during that time, but he said he wouldn't make any long-term commitments because he said until he felt the way he felt talking to me for those 11 hours, that he would wait. So I called him. I waited until 3 a.m. California time, 6 a.m. Bahamas time, and I called him. And the first thing he said is everything okay?
This is the first time you've called him in 8 years.
He said, is everything okay? I said, why do you ask? He says, because I haven't heard your voice. I haven't heard your voice in 8 years. And I said, oh, yeah. It's the first time I called him in 8 years. And he said, what made you call? And I said, I was wondering if you still liked me. And he said, I do. And I said, are you single still? He said, I am. And I said, I stuttered. I'm not going to make it sound like I was all eloquent at this point. I said, do you want to date me? Probably one of the scariest moments in the last 10 years of my life. Because I knew I felt it. And he says, I do. And I was done. I already knew he was a friend and he was consistent. And I needed to figure out how to date him and not shadow over him like I could be a tsunami. You know, when you work so long solo, in whatever field you're in, whatever world you're in, I wanted to do it right. I wanted to, not perfect, but right. And so I immediately told him that I'm a runner. Immediately I told him that
A runner from relationships.
if the relationship doesn't seem right, or if I think you're going to leave me, I'll step back. And after 8 years, I realized that I wasn't staying single because I chose to be single. I was staying single because I was afraid of getting hurt again. And while being afraid of being hurt again is a real feeling, it's not an excuse to not step into love again. So I realized the responsible thing I could do if I was afraid of being hurt again was to give myself the parameters, the guideline and support as I step into love again versus avoiding love again. So many women avoid love again to avoid hurt again. And that's not just throwing out the baby with the bathwater. That's throwing out the tub, it's throwing out the house. That's robbing yourself of something beautiful. And so why not develop the muscle of how to love, how to agree, how to communicate? How about we develop that muscle so we can have love and reduce the chance of being hurt again? So that's what I decided to do. I could easily fill my love void with work. And because I work with the love of people, I work meeting great people, I work traveling the world, I work living a first-class life, it's really easy to fill that love space with that. And I didn't want to let myself off the hook of going, no, build a muscle. Build a muscle of partnership.
Yeah, because I was just thinking, it's like you fill your life with that. Other people will fill it with maybe drugs or alcohol or, you know, like a very unhealthy behavior. And so I really do process, like, what would your life have been like if he hadn't pursued you for 8 years to come to that conclusion? And
I definitely wouldn't have been with him. The other question you asked is, would I have pursued him? I would not. I tell Marcellus all the time, you're the reason why we're married. And I'm grateful for you. You're the reason why we're both so happy. He's the reason why. And I said to him once, why didn't you say something other than hi? Why didn't you say something other than, I was Jelani, why didn't you say, I like you? Let's go out on a date. And he said to me, he said, I'm paralyzingly shy. He said, you don't understand the courage it took me just to say hi. So that taught me something too, is to meet people where they are. Meet people where they are, not where I think they should be. Like, I was imposing my expectations on him because other alpha men would pursue me like, you know, "Rrr," and he wasn't that way. And actually, the thing I love most about him is that he's not that way, you know. And so I was imposing what I thought his pursuit of me should look like. And when he said, you don't understand, you don't know the courage it took me just to say hi to you every month. He goes, you could have replied back, I'm married, leave me alone. You could have replied back, get a life, stop texting me. He goes, every month I took that risk.
were you replying
Sometimes.
just with like, hi?
Hi. And my replies gave him no encouragement. No encouragement to continue. So when I look at it, he was super courageous. And I wasn't. I didn't support our connection until that night when I laid on my bed at 11 p.m. and I read all of his messages. And I was like, oh my God, he's been under my nose the entire time. And let me tell you what my husband told me. I like saying husband, you notice.
I love it.
Let me tell you what he told me on our second date. Because I'm like telling him about the alpha males that pursue me and they come after me and why aren't you doing that? And a strong woman like me would respond to a strong man. And he looked at me with a very calm face. He said, I'm a masculine man. I'm not an alpha male. He said, alpha males are hunters, but they're not keepers. He said, I'm a keeper. He said, but masculine men will always stand behind. Tom is a masculine man. Masculine men will always stand behind alpha men who are always talking and toting and bravadoing. He goes, and we'll just wait for them to run out of gas. He said, but we don't ever try to get in front of them. It's not our personality. He said, but we're the ones that's always there for you when you're crying. We're the ones that's always going to support you through your hard time. But we're also the ones you're always going to step over to get to the alpha male. He said because television polarizes and displays and honors the alpha male. He goes, and I have nothing against them. He said, but there's a whole group of beautiful men called masculine men. And we're not aggressive. And we're not bravado. And we're not going to billy club you over the head and drag you back to the cave. That's not our personality. But we will just be there for you.
So do you feel like it was a misconception then of what you thought you wanted?
Completely. I dated alpha men for 20 years and got to the point where I was disgusted with them. But I thought that was who I was attracted to. So I didn't even understand that I was attracted to the pursuit. I wasn't attracted to the relationship.
Oh.
Yeah, because they hunt really well. They just suck at keeping.
Also, though, when you are a strong woman, you do look for a man who is also just as strong.
So I realized that I want a man as strong, but my partner is as strong as I am.
Right.
But I thought the strength had to come through it was a personality. It was a display of strength all the time, every day. And strength looks like this. When strength doesn't have to look like that. Strength is quiet. Strength, it can be silent. Strength is consistent. Strength is staying in the fight when the fight doesn't feel good. Strength is finding resolution. Strength is the apology. Strength is so many things I had not seen in my alpha male relationships, and nothing against the alpha male, they're just not for me. Strength is in what I see from this human being who says, I'm not going anywhere. I got you. You want to cry? Come right here. You can take your cape off. You can go serve the world and come home and climb right here and take your cape off. I'm not going to beat down the door at your event and do some poetry on stage, but I will have dinner for you when you come home. And I will let you be all of who you need to be. I will not just hold you in one regard. You can take your cape off with me.
And he didn't just say that, he really did show it, right? And that's like
He didn't say much because he's quiet. And I had to learn how to hear differently. I had to learn how to hear what's underneath the words, hear the silently getting up. I had to hear the holding my hand. I had to hear the emojis and the bitmojis. I had to learn how to hear holistically. I only heard the vibration of sound that I knew. And partnership, relationship, talks in many vibrations, because there's two people involved. So I had to adjust my frequency to hear his sound. And then I started seeing love in all these different ways. I was like, oh, yeah, that's love. And it really is love. I'm not making it up. I'm not, it's love. Like he will wash my car before he'll wash his car because he knows I love my car to be shiny. He's like, okay, I'm okay. I'm the dude. When it comes to our cars, I'm the dude. I want it shiny. Yeah. And so I'll decide I want to go somewhere, and it rains a lot in the Bahamas. It's the tropics. And the car would have had, mud on it from drive. I have a Jeep with really big wheels. I'm a Jeeper.
Yeah,
I got a
you
Jeep with really big wheels, and so it flies over into the car. And I'll say, oh, babe, I'm going to run out and do something. And he'll go, okay. And then he'll disappear. And I'm in the bathroom getting dressed. And I'll go, where is my husband? And I'll look outside, and he's wiping down my car. I didn't ask them. And so I had to learn all the forms of love.
I've heard you say, don't let your next pay for your ex.
Yes. Yes, we do it so much. We rob our future because we haven't healed our past. And until you heal your past, it will keep showing up in your present and keep robbing your future.
Yeah. I love how much you like ask yourself questions as well to really come to these conclusions. A powerful question I heard you actually ask is, how would you live if heartbreak didn't exist? Like that really did hit me when I read that, because again, going back to how much we take our past into our future, and you know, sometimes you have to fall to then realize what you have. Like I had a very abusive ex-boyfriend growing up, and I was with him for about 4 years, and I was very insecure, you know, bullied for my looks, and it was the first guy that liked me, so I started dating him at, you know, young age. And it wasn't until I then met Tom that I realized, oh,
This is what.
this is what kindness looks like,
Yeah.
grace looks like,
Yes.
masculinity can look
Yes.
like. And we so much think of, if you've had the heartbreak, when you know how that feels, that hesitation of moving forward, like you said, the fact that he literally courted you for 8
Yeah.
years is such a testament
Yeah.
to him and how much you connected in that 11 and a half hours. And so having that question of like, but what would you do if you hadn't have experienced that heartbreak?
Yeah.
Or if you knew the
Yeah.
heartbreak wasn't going to happen?
Yeah.
Like, how would you act
How would you
differently?
leap? How would you leap? What would you try? What would you join? How would you soar? How much of your heart would you let out? What would you say unfiltered? What parts of your heart will you give the microphone to? There's so much of your heart that's never gotten the microphone, like unexpressed desires. What would you say? Well, how would you love if you knew heartbreak didn't happen? If you knew you couldn't? Well, how would you leap? Like, what would you do with just 5% more self-esteem? What would you do? What would you do if you knew you can mend anything? What would you do? How would you run? How would you leap? How would you soar? What would it look like? What would she look like? What would the world see if your fears didn't interrupt your desires? Who would we see? And how would we get you? And how would you sing your song? Your song has so many lyrics, and you deserve to sing all the lyrics of your song. The love lyrics, the companion lyrics, the beauty lyrics, the artistic lyrics. You deserve to sing every sound in your body, your vibration. And when you sing the song, we get the benefit of hearing your sound. There's 2 winners. You get to sing your song that only you can sing. You're the only person that can sing your song. And then we get to hear your song. And you have one job. Before you leave this place, your song must be sang. Your song, sister, must be sang. You gotta, that's a black woman, sang, not sing, sang. You must sing your song. And only you can sing your song. And there's nothing better than watching and witnessing the world move into the vibration of your song, of your truth, of your words. If you want to ask me the best part about my life, the best part is watching someone else tune their musical instruments, their vocal cords, clear their throat, because they heard my song, and my song inspired their writing, their fingerprint, their DNA to discover and sing their song. That, my friend, that's worth getting up for every day.
You have come in, blown my mind, made me cry, like just made me speechless. Everything and above. Girl, where can people find you, and all just the incredible work that you're doing, and you've got some amazing things coming up?
Oh, I'm so excited. So I am in the season of teaching people how to hone and own and use their voices in whatever capacity to be an unforgettable speaker, not just on stage, but in any area. And I'm excited that we have a 5-day Legendary Speakers Challenge coming up, and they can find me at www.legendaryspeaker.com. Again, that's www.legendaryspeaker.com for a 5-day speaker challenge that's completely free, where I teach you some secret sauce around how to take any message to the next level and how to be unforgettable on any stage or in any conversation or on video for any interview.
That's amazing. And where can people find you?
They can find me at Motivating the Masses. That's my jam. I'm always there. Also on Instagram, Lisa, the number 2, Motivate. Lisa to Motivate. Always there motivating and inspiring.
Keep watching to learn the 3 big signs that he doesn't respect you. Today, we're going to talk about disrespect.
Oh, okay.
And I wanted
Did I do something?
You did not, but you speak so eloquently about how to identify when someone's disrespecting you and then what to do. Now, here's the thing. When a stranger's disrespecting you, I think it can somewhat be easier to identify and have your own back. But what happens when you're being disrespected in a partnership? I think a lot of us may either make excuses, oh, they're just going through a hard time, because we want the relationship to work so badly. So let's start by talking about what are the signs that you've noticed in a relationship where you have personally tried to say, hey, I've noticed you're crossing the line here. What is that sign? And then how do you handle it?
That is a great question. So you're talking about in my relationship with Chris?
Yes.
Okay. You know, what's interesting about this as it relates to Chris is I feel like he probably has more instances where I am disrespecting him, because I tend to be more, I'm just more of everything. I'm the whirlwind, I'm the one with ADHD, I'm the creative force, I'm the tornado through the house, and my husband is a very centered, very pulled back, very even kind of personality. And so I think there are lots of places where he has made requests that I do not follow through on.
Okay, pause it. This is freaking amazing. And here's the thing. I've heard you say that in it where you were going through signs and then you're like, oh, I do that. Oh, I do that. And that is beautiful. And the reason why it's beautiful is it's not about necessarily just them, right? It's not about if someone's disrespecting you only, what do you do? It's the fact that, are you being the disrespect into the relationship?
Yes.
And are they forgiving you because they want to see good in you? And so when we talk about how to have a successful relationship, you've been with your husband for so long, I've been with my husband for so long, and it's the nuances of it's not just them, it is you as well.
Oh, it's 100% you. So here's the thing about somebody else disrespecting you. You know when it happens because your energy shifts in response to what they did. So I'm going to give you two examples where I'm the chief offender, okay? Actually, I can now think of like 4 or 5. So
let's go deep, girl.
Well, you know, it doesn't help that I am married to a man who you know well, who is a Buddhist meditation instructor. He's a certified yoga instructor. And today was day 1 at the age of 53 of him beginning to get his master's degree in something called, I think it's called transformational psychology, which is all about spiritual psychology and therapy. So the guy is so introspective that he is calm. He is like the opposite energy of me, and it has really worked. But there are times where I create major disorder, Lisa. And I would imagine, knowing you and Tom, and knowing how Tom is just so, and the genius of his brain, and knowing how you are, that you probably have some of the same things. So here's an example. Cardboard boxes. I hate breaking down cardboard boxes. And we live in the age of Amazon, and so there are always cardboard boxes being delivered. And I will unpack cardboard boxes, and then I neatly stack them by the door with the intention that at some point I will come back and cut them apart and flatten them out. I never do it. Like, I literally never do it. I will carry them out to the garbage. They make it all the way to the garage, stacked like a Jenga puzzle, but I don't take it across. This drives Chris fucking crazy. Okay, that's one. And because he has asked me 1,000 times to do it, I should do it. Because what he has said to me, Lisa, is when you don't do this, it makes me feel like I'm the maid or the custodian in our relationship. Another example is that this is an embarrassing thing to admit. Like now I'm coming on like confessions on Lisa's couch here, but I have really bad ADHD. And one of the things that I'm embarrassed to tell you
Go on.
is that I blow my nose. And I will blow my nose, and the second I'm done blowing my nose and I start walking toward the garbage can, I literally forget that the Kleenex is in my hand. And I will walk past the garbage can, and then all of a sudden I leave it somewhere. It drives Chris crazy. And so the thing that I think is really important is that Chris keeps bringing it up. I've gotten way better at the cardboard box situation. He now understands that I don't want to do it just then. He likes to do it just then, but I don't like to do it just then because I'm thinking, what if I have to return this thing and I need this box? So I need, like, Lisa's literally zoning out already. She's like, Mel, you're fucking nuts.
No, I'm like, I get his point.
Right?
I'm the one that wants you to cut the boxes, and Tom's the one that's like, why on earth would I spend even a second of my time cutting the box?
Yes, completely.
Now, the reason why I think this is so important is we're joking, right? It's like, oh, it's a cardboard box. And
But this is everything.
Exactly. Because this is the moment, or these are the moments that we all know. And I think to your point is, you do that long enough, Mel, he's going to start to build resentment.
Of course. You know, and I think here's the other thing. It's very easy when somebody speaks to you in a demeaning way to call that out as disrespect. It's very easy when somebody is verbally abusive to call, or gives you the silent treatment, to call that out as disrespect. But these small sort of injustices, or these small sort of passive aggressive things that create friction inside of you, this creates this distance emotionally between the two of you. And you are exactly right. It's inside these small things that all the resentment build. And it's also inside of these moments that you start to become sequestered emotionally from one another. And so, you know, those are two examples where in our relationship, there was, on Chris's side, this deep feeling of being disrespected. On my side, the issue that kept coming up in our marriage, and this is even something that we've been talking to our marriage therapist about recently, which is, we have an incredible relationship, but one of the things that really hasn't been working, and we didn't realize it, is that my addiction to being busy, which is something that I have been doing a lot of work on, makes me be 15 steps ahead of Chris. And if you're with somebody for 26 years who is always 15 steps ahead, oh, I already booked the plane tickets, oh, I already got a reservation, oh, it's all handled. Basically what happens is my over-functioning and busyness has trained my husband to basically go, why bother? Because either Mel's already handled it, or if I try to do it, it won't be the right thing. And so Chris withdraws into his corner, right? While I'm like out over here running 15 steps ahead. Now, while I'm out over here running 15 steps ahead, I'm going, why is nobody planning anything for my birthday? Why, am I the one that's always doing this? Why is this? And Chris over here going, I don't have this, like, she's not letting me contribute. And this has been something that has become this well-worn thing between us for 26 years.
Really, the thing I wanted to get to in this episode very specifically with you is there are signs of other people maybe mistreating us. So there's a lot of women that watch this show where they're stuck in a relationship that they may not even be able to identify as toxic. And so where are those signs of the toxicity where maybe someone's manipulating you, gaslighting you, stonewalling you? But the second part to it is, this is what I feel about true freaking female empowerment, homie, is you gotta own your own shit.
Yeah.
And so while I sit here and I really wanted to talk about what are these signs that someone else may be showing us, I absolutely wanted to talk about, well, how are you showing up? Because I don't want to be that like, oh, well, it's them. Oh, it's them. No, relationship is freaking 50-50. If you believe it's 50-50, how the hell are you showing up?
Yeah.
And if you think you're showing up, oh, I'm amazing and are you really? Are you actually giving your partner what they need? And so that was where I wanted to go. How do you know the way they're behaving is based on who they are, or the way they're behaving is based on how you're responding to them?
I think it's both. So it's an excellent question. And so here's what I want to say about it. If you want to know how you are showing up, and if you want to truly improve how you participate in that relationship, simply send your partner a text that says, how can I be a better partner to you? And then ask for specifics. And Chris would tell me, well, you could flatten the cardboard boxes. You could throw out your Kleenex. You could put your phone down at 6 o'clock at night. You could take the dog for a walk in the morning. You could be more present. You could, like, he would have a whole list of things that would make a difference. And most of us don't bother to ask. So that's number one. You're not even asking. And when you ask that question, your job is to listen and elicit more things for you to do. It is not to defend yourself or to give feedback. And so that's number one. Number two, let's just go generally to disrespect. Because I answered the question by saying, you actually don't need a list of all those things because you know in your body when something's not right. If somebody's gaslighting you and they're making you feel like you're the one going nuts because they're like, I didn't say that. And you're like, well, yeah, you did. You feel friction in your body. You start questioning something. That is not your natural state. If the relationship works, whether it's a friendship or a romantic relationship, you will feel energetically aligned with the person. We are energetic human beings. The second that you are around a stranger or a friend or a parent or a sibling or a lover and something feels off or you feel any kind of bad vibration, there is all the evidence that you need.
I'm going to throw something at you then. Because in that situation, I agree, but sometimes so many of us have taught ourselves to ignore it, taught ourselves to dull that feeling, because maybe from childhood we've been
We didn't
taught,
teach ourselves. We were taught to.
we were taught to. So over time, we carry that with us. And so, so many of, you're 100% right. If you can acknowledge, oh, this is uncomfortable. But I think so many of us in those moments start by going, oh my God, what did I do wrong? I must be going crazy. You even said it, right? So how do we break that notion of us going straight to, oh my God, it must be me. I must be going crazy. Instead of saying, well, hang on a minute, sit with it.
So I've been talking about this a lot lately. But I have spent the last 2 years really doing a ton of work on my own nervous system regulation and on trying to heal anxiety from the neck down in my body. And so I want to say that, yes, we were all, especially as little girls, our generation, and I'm a little bit older than you, but our generation grew up with a parenting style and method of the time, which is to correct children, to make them behave. It was not about connection. And for many of us, there was a complete mismatch with the way that our parents communicated with us and what we actually needed. And so a lot of us were taught in childhood that love is transactional, that I love you when you're behaving, I am proud of you when you get good grades, I survived that, it's no big deal. And so there were moments where the big word is separate. You felt separate from the person, your mother or your father, who you needed to feel attached to in order to be safe. And when you have an experience of feeling separate, an alarm goes off. And it could be literally something as benign as you fall, and instead of getting a hug you're lifted up and told to get back out there.
It doesn't hurt.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt. It could be as simple as you really wanted to play the flute, but your parents were like, nope, everybody in the family plays the trumpet, here you go. This moment of feeling separate, and it makes you feel unsafe. And what you get trained in is you get trained to feel like somebody's happiness and keeping everybody okay is your job. And you, like, all guilt comes from one place, which is we feel guilty because we think we're responsible for somebody else being happy. That's where it all comes from. Because children can't go, oh, mom's having a bad day, that's why she's being a bitch right now. Children go, oh, I feel separate from her and she's angry, and so something must be wrong with me. That's the source of all anxiety. It's the source of all alarm. It's this feeling of being separate and unsafe because you're not getting what you need. And so how this relates to toxic behavior is we are so used to making excuses for everybody else. We are so used to feeling like somebody else's okayness is more important than ours. We are so used to thinking that being liked and being loved means managing people's disappointment, because a lot of love from the parenting style of our parents' generation is transactional. It's about correcting us. It's about, that generation was not even taught about our emotional needs. It's not their fault. They didn't get it either. And so I feel like step number one is you got to understand that whenever you have that like first wave, so let's just take something really simple. Your sister, who you love, when you're little, would come in and borrow your shit and not tell you. And your mom, if you got upset, would be like, just let it go. Right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know that that happened in your house, but we have.
It was probably more the other way around. I think I was stealing her shit. But
Yeah. Like, as the mother of two daughters, I saw this all the time. And so, if you're not validated in that situation, you start to feel like you don't matter. And so what happens is if you're an adult and your spouse does not like slice the cardboard boxes, it actually brings up that shit from childhood that got stored in your body. That experience of being separate, that experience of being not seen, not important, not loved. And so the first alarm that goes off is the alarm from the little you that didn't get the reassurance or love in that experience from childhood. And it's always triggered by moments of separateness. So in your romantic relationship, like I'm even processing this live with you right now. When I put the Kleenex on the countertop and not in the garbage can underneath because of my ADHD, I literally just have a brain what? Forgot about it. I didn't even remember it was in my hand. When Chris sees it, he has the same experience from childhood of nobody being home when he got home from school. He doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if he asks because they have an excuse. That is what that brings up in his body. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Right? And so the first thing that you need to do is to understand that discomfort in your body, let's not call it anxiety anymore. Let's just call it's the little you. And you need to give yourself a little bit of love and reassurance just right in that moment. Because you didn't get it as a child and your body keeps triggering it in moments of separation or moments where you feel invisible because you remember feeling that way as a kid. We all have this. Everybody has this. Then you can put your hand on your heart, you can take a deep breath, you can just be like, whatever you need to do to go toward this thing, instead of going, something's wrong, I'm gonna kill my spouse, there's such a jerk. Just be like, oh, whoa, there I go. I feel a little there it is. That's that little me feeling invisible, feeling like I don't matter. I do matter. And, what Chris does now, which is super helpful, is he takes a photo of it. He doesn't touch it. He takes a photo of it. And then I always just apologize. Oh my God, I don't even remember doing that. I am so sorry. Thank you for leaving it for me so I can take care of it. And thank you for not throwing it out because I didn't leave it there for you. I'm trying, and I appreciate your patience. So that closes the loop. but you will never express the boundary that you need to express until you also address the alarm that keeps going off. Because you're not even giving yourself the basics of what you need. So there's no way in hell you are going to express what you need to another person. No way. And so all boundaries, they don't start with, like, and I don't even like saying like a toxic person. I like saying toxic behavior because then it puts it on you. Like, I'm not a toxic person, but I engage in toxic behavior.
That's powerful.
Right? And here's why I like calling it toxic behavior versus a toxic person. We are in too much of a cancel culture. We ghost people, we label people and toss them to the side. And I believe that every human being is capable of changing. And I also believe that if you want people to become better, whether that's better in terms of their mental health or better in terms of their habits or addictions or beliefs or whatever it may be, you have to fucking create room for people to change. And by labeling somebody as toxic and then just tossing them out the window, you are not identifying the behavior that doesn't work for you. And when you start to go, the behavior of you giving me the silent treatment is toxic behavior, and this is what my boundary is with it. Now, look, I realize your comments are not going to blow up with people who have been in relationships with narcissists. And, you know, that they're toxic. Maybe their behavior's toxic, but isn't it also toxic for you to gossip to your girlfriends and not do anything about it? Isn't it also toxic for you to beat yourself up in your head and like not leave a situation like that? And by the way, don't you dare sit here and accuse me of saying anybody deserves anything. What I'm trying to say, because nobody deserves to be abused, what I'm trying to say is it's real easy to point the finger, but the power is in looking in the mirror and taking responsibility for what you're going to do. And having been I worked a domestic violence hotline as a crisis intervention counselor for 4 years. And so there is the psychological entrapment. There are very real reasons why people stay in abusive relationships. That's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about your garden variety bullshit that happens in a lot of relationships. Being passive aggressive, not asking for what you need, not pointing out what somebody is doing wrong, but gossiping about them instead. Tolerating the same crap over and over and over again and never saying anything, which is like the reverse form of the silent treatment, because nobody is going to get better if you don't tell them what they're doing wrong. Like, one of the things that I also do that's toxic is, for the last 2 years, we have been in the middle of renovating a house in southern Vermont. Our son is going to the public high school up there. And so my husband, Chris, and I have literally been back and forth and back and forth and back and forth between our house that we have lived in for 26 years outside of Boston while we're renovating this place in southern Vermont. And it's a 3-hour drive. And while we were under renovations, I couldn't be filming videos there or doing virtual speeches there. I had to be in Boston. And so I would go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And it was exhausting. But here's my toxic behavior. Whenever Chris would go, well, why don't I come down? Oh, no, it's okay. You don't need to make the drive. I'll be up on Friday. And so my other toxic behavior in this relationship is literally not letting him help me. And then being burnt out and pissed off that you never come see me. Right?
Yeah, and then building that resentment as well, but it's actually not true. It's a
not
false
true.
story that you're telling yourself.
Yes, because my toxic behavior is I just got to take care of myself. Like, I'm not used to somebody else taking care of me. So it's just what it was like as a little girl. I take care of everybody's emotions, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And so I think, a couple things that we've covered so far. Number one, all you need to know about toxic behavior and, that sort of disrespect is that you will feel tension or you will feel some sort of something in your body, friction in your body. There's your sign. Second thing that you've learned is that a lot of times that alarm that's going off when you're either experiencing disrespect or you're disrespecting yourself, that is a stored memory in your body from being a little kid and feeling separate or invisible. So step number 2 after recognizing it is give yourself a little love. Give yourself a hug. There's a super cool technique that Dr. Russell does where you like take a towel and you like, you know, kind of pull a towel like this around you, like,
Oh, like
to
giving
like give yourself a hug.
Yeah.
But you do it actually not like this, but with a towel. It's really cool. And then the third thing is, once you've sort of turned off the alarm, now ask yourself, what is the request you need to make? What is it about the thing that the person said or the thing that they did that is triggering this in you? And the thing about giving another human being feedback is, I think it's really important to make sure you understand how to explain the impact that their behavior is having on you. Because if you just go to somebody and say, can you please just do the frickin' cardboard boxes? Or Chris would get really upset with me and be like, you know, they can't pick up the cardboard boxes unless they're cut up. And so now I'm being made wrong. And then I'm gonna, of course, it's human instinct to defend yourself when you're made wrong. But when Chris comes to me and says, you know, if the boxes sit for more than 24 hours, I know you're not coming back to get them. And that means that you believe I'm gonna do it for you. That makes me feel like I'm your hired helper. What I'm asking is, I'm okay with you leaving the boxes stacked like a puzzle for 24 hours because I know you might need one of them to ship something back. But either set an alarm on your phone and slice them down, or come to me and ask me if I can do it for you. So in addition to telling what's the behavior, why, how does it make you feel and why? And the third piece is, this is what I need you to do. Because you know what you need the person to do. You know what's not working, you know why it's causing friction, and that is all you need to do in your relationship. And so now you've taken care of this alarm that goes off that comes from childhood that makes you feel separate or invisible or unlovable or unloved. You have soothed yourself, which means you're now giving yourself what you need. And now you're empowered to ask somebody else by saying, this is the behavior, this is how it makes me feel. Because when Chris tells me that's how it makes him feel, I feel like a fucking asshole. Because I love the guy. I don't want him to feel like that, because that's not what I mean. And so when I know the emotional connection to executing this task, I am 10 times more likely to do it. Because a cardboard box stacked by a door does not mean anything to me.
I'm going to jump in here because this is so damn powerful, and you guys have really worked on your relationship. What about those moments? Because you're a freaking alpha, right? You're like a whirlwind, you come in, this is what I'm doing, like you're a beast, and I freaking love it. I mean, I love it, you know I do, right? So like you are this beast, and because I've met Chris, I know how like sweet and quiet he is, and so I actually really want to go deep into being an alpha woman, because I think this is super important. In moments like this, where you're with your husband, in the past, and again, I know that you've really worked on it, and that's very eloquent of where you've gotten now. I'd love to go back a little and say, like, really for the audience to hear how you've actually navigated to get to this point. Because you've definitely spoken about, what do you call it, the breadwinner resentment rage.
Yes.
So if you don't mind taking back, in case
Sure.
people don't know your story, which you've told before, but if you don't mind going back to the moment
Sure.
where like 5-second rule freaking takes off, because I really want people to hear where you've come from in your relationship, because it is so powerful for how you navigate, how you've navigated, how you show up, how she shows up, your triggers, his triggers, because there's one more thing I want to add to all of this, is you can't change them. Stop trying to change them. They have to do it themselves.
Yeah.
So to hear how he's evolved is so powerful. And then to also hear how you have evolved is so powerful. But it has been, you guys have done the work separately and then seem like you've come together.
Yeah. So I'm going to preface everything that I'm about to say with this disclaimer. Everything that I'm saying, I can only speak to the pressure that Chris and I felt as a heterosexual couple.
Okay, yeah.
Because so much of the dynamic about resentment and alpha female and all that shit has way more to do with the pressure that are put on men to provide. It has a lot less to do with you being an alpha female as it does with what society says to dudes if you're not the one making the money.
Ooh.
And I didn't realize how big of a deal this was truly until about a year or so ago. So Chris and I, when we met, we both worked. We both contributed to everything. We paid our bills together. We didn't have separate accounts. We just threw it all in together. He worked, I worked. We just ham and egged it. You know, we were co-parenting, co-earning, co-this, co-that. And then he got laid off from a job and decided to go into the restaurant business, which had been a dream, and stepped into entrepreneurship, something he had always wanted to do. It was what his MBA was in. And I was fully not supportive. I was pregnant with our son, and I'm like, wait a minute. God, we're like in that stage of life where we're making the ends meet, but that's it. Was there a trust fund that was part of this arrangement that I'm not aware of? Like, how are we supposed to pay our bills if you're not working? I did not sign up for this. And he basically said, I'm miserable. I'm absolutely miserable. I do not want to work for somebody else. And I'm willing to sell the house. I'm willing to downsize. I am not willing to be miserable to pay for a lifestyle. And we were not living like high in the hog. I mean, this was like not like we're not living in like it's literally like we're in suburbia. Right. And so I'm like, oh shit, he's serious. So at that moment, I said, fine. We did some math. I said, you have 8 months. You got to be earning X. I will take a second job. I'll do whatever I can. But you got 8 months. There's your runway. And if at 8 months you guys have not brought in the funding and you can't be making this, still trying to make it even, Steven. Okay? So in 8 months, they land the funding. He makes the money that we had calculated, and all is fine. So continue to go on where the restaurant's starting. I'm now like doing my thing. I'm making a little more than him at this point because it's a brand new venture. And then all hell breaks loose 3 years into the restaurant business. The US goes into a huge recession. They had 2 of 3 locations that were complete dogs. We were upside down with the house. And there is nothing other than a major health crisis or a death that is more stressful than dealing with no money and not being able to pay your bills. Like when they've studied this, that there is a significant impact on your ability to be happy and to manage stress based on just an achievable amount of money as a baseline level. It's at this point that my husband's mental health starts to go off a cliff. It's also at this point that my resentment and mental health starts to go off the cliff, because I too have bought into this notion that he's supposed to provide. My money's my money. My money's like the extra money, like the go to Disney World money, the kids can like get new cleats money. His money is supposed to be the money.
Right.
Traditional roles here. And so what's interesting about this is if you have that experience with your partner, regardless of your gender, regardless of what kind of relationship with you're in, I want you to stop and consider that if you're putting pressure on your partner when it comes to finances, that is your ambition. That is your desire. It is not their responsibility to pay your bills or to provide for you. And too often, we women in particular are looking to a partner to fulfill our own ambition. And meanwhile, that partner of yours might also have societal pressure to be providing. And, you know, just like we women are trained to kind of look at one another and size each other up, and thin or tall or this or that, and my boobs are this size, like we obsess about how we look and our physical form as a way to compare. Dudes are doing this about their bank accounts and the cars they drive and the house they have, and they are. Because society just keeps reinforcing that. Like, if you're not a dude that can really provide for your family, you're fucked. And providing, by the way, doesn't in society's like lane mean love and emotional connection. It means money.
So true.
Right? And so Chris's mental health starts to plummet.
Because also their self-esteem is tied to it.
Correct.
So now it's what they hold their value to now starts to going down. So now their self-esteem starts to go down with it, because that's how they feel that's what they believe that they bring to the table to make themselves feel better.
Just like we women were trained to believe that someday the prince is going to come in, that your worth is about somebody else liking you.
Choosing you, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and it doesn't ever occur. Like, I was sitting with our daughters who are 23 and 22 and a group of their friends this summer, and I'm like, when are you guys going to understand that you can choose? Why are you all sitting there talking about how you go out to these bars and nobody comes up to you? Why is it up to them? I think it begins in middle school when you go to the first dance and it's presumed that the little boys are going to ask the little girls to dance.
Yeah.
It's sick, honestly. And but we're all getting it in different ways. And so I'm trying to explain it this way because, you know, I fully own that for a long time in my marriage, I was putting pressure on Chris to either succeed in the corporate world, or I was angry at him because he was failing as an entrepreneur. But all of that was my ambition. See, I married a guy who doesn't give a shit about money. That dude would live in a yurt. I mean, as it is, we live on a mountain in Vermont. You can't see another human being from where we live. You can't even hear them. He would prefer to not have tons of stuff. He doesn't care about that game. He had a father who ran one of the largest advertising agencies in the world, went from mailroom to CEO. And so Chris watched somebody climb the ladder, and he lived in his father's shadow forever and believed that if he were successful in business, he would be able to be respected and loved by his father. That's what that was all about.
And now you're echoing that kind of
Correct.
response.
So of course he marries a woman that is like climbing her own ladder and like literally the personality type of his father. And I chose somebody who is deeply spiritual and grounded and stable and kind, because I would self-destruct with somebody that was as ambitious and as crazy as I am. Chris needs my energy and life force, and I need his stability. So, you know, he starts falling off a cliff mentally, because not only is he failing in his business, but friends and family have invested. So he's not only letting himself down, he's got a wife who's pissed off and angry. He's got payroll that's bouncing. He's got a business he's trying to save. He's got investors that he's let down. Like, he was in a really dark place when he finally got out of the restaurant business. By this point, you know, I'm just like trying to keep us above float. I'm working all these consulting jobs. I'm like just doing whatever I can to help us pay the bills. It was awful. And, you know, we slowly start to chip away at it, and they slowly start to turn the business around, and ultimately sold it to an investor, and Chris left. But for the 2 years after he left the restaurant business, he hadn't been paid a salary in a year, and then he spent 2 years just trying to find himself. And I was in charge because he was lost. And I didn't realize how lost he was, because I don't even think he was aware of how lost he was in terms of the shame that men feel when they're not successful. and the self-criticism that they put on themselves when they don't provide. And when you feel that much emotional pain, you either numb it, that's where addiction comes in, you self-destruct. There's all kinds of like terrible things that can happen because we don't want to feel that pain. And so thankfully, Chris, went inward, did a ton of therapy. That's when he became a yoga instructor and started studying meditation and working with a therapist. It took him a while to realize that he was struggling with depression. And that was yet another one of those things. It's like, oh my God, first I can't pay the bills. Now I'm also mentally weak. So he didn't want to even admit that. And I'll tell you, like, there was a lot of rage that I felt and a lot of resentment that I felt. And I guess I felt it because, in the beginning, because I just bought in to what society tells you. And what's interesting is that our kids say, and Chris will say the same thing, and I certainly do, that the greatest gift of their childhood was that from basically most of middle school all the way through high school, Chris has been the primary parent. And Chris grew up with a dad that was never home. And the irony is he always wanted to be an entrepreneur because he thought it would give him more flexibility to be home. And I think oftentimes life hands you what you want, but not in the way you thought you were going to get it. Meanwhile, he's deeply struggling because he feels like, here I am on a Tuesday at 2:30 in the afternoon in the pickup line. And I can sit here and tell myself that I'm happy to be a stay-at-home dad, but the truth is, it feels like there's something wrong. It feels like I failed. And because he didn't say, I want to be a stay-at-home dad, and I'm like, it just is what happened. And meanwhile, I'm all over the place. And we would do this thing where every time the bill would come at a restaurant, I would just kick him under the table to pay it because I knew me putting the card out was very triggering.
For him?
Yes.
How did you feel about that?
I think in the very beginning, I was proud of myself, and then I was kind of annoyed. But what really flipped it for me was this, is when I started to realize that this is actually what I'm ambitious. I love building shit. I'm driven by making an impact. Chris is too, but in a totally different way. And I feel like through all of this chaos, we actually landed in the right roles in our relationship. And the cool thing for our children is they have watched parents go from both earning to dad's an entrepreneur to a business failing to mom stepping into the big role and taking the lead, to dad being home and being around, and how amazing is that, to then dad launching his men's retreat business called Soul Degree, to mom then doing a book, to then dad then getting his master's. He's starting at the age of 53, getting his master's in therapy and psychology. They've seen this sort of reinvention, partnership, gender bending, traditional role, all of it in the course of the 26 years that we've been together. And I think that is hugely important because the truth is that the gender roles that have been imposed on us are complete fucking horseshit. And I personally believe that for women in particular, it is critical that you earn money because money is power and money is freedom. And money gives you a seat at the table, whether that is your kitchen table or it is a table at a restaurant or a table in a boardroom. You cannot deny that there is a power dynamic in money because I will tell you, in my own relationship, when I was the only one earning money, boy, did the power flip and boy, did I feel entitled. All of a sudden I'm like, oh, this is the way dudes think. Oh, interesting. Chris and I would get in a fight about something, I'd be on the road all week traveling, I'd come home tired. He's been home all week with the kids. He's tired. and I come in and whatever it may be, I might dump my suitcase right by the door and spread all my shit out. And he says something, could you put it in the closet? I can't tell you how many times I almost said, are you kidding me? Do you know I've been working all week? As if what I'm doing is more important than what he's doing. And I think it has less to do with the gender than it has to do with the way that money creates a power dynamic in a couple. Like, this is the thing about money in a relationship. Power follows the money. And power dynamics are driven a lot by who, like, it's presumed that the person that makes the money has the say. Unless you work hard to eradicate that.
So one thing, I love that, and one thing actually Tom and I, because I was very aware of that early on, so you know, I was a housewife for 8 years, so I was very aware that I never wanted to go and ask him. I was like, that doesn't make me feel good, it makes me feel like I'm less than him. It wasn't him, it was my own thinking of it. And I remember having this discussion with him, and he was like, well babe, of course, like, we'll take my salary and we split it, because you earn half. He's like, you're at home earning half. So that was actually really early on, where it was like, okay, we'll just take the money, we put them, you know, like I was really handing
I would never tolerate separate accounts. Like, I feel like if you're with somebody and they make more money and they're demanding separate accounts, you have an inequitable relationship.
Yeah. It wasn't a separate account. It
No,
was
that's what I mean. No. I'm saying you guys did the same thing.
Yeah.
Because I always said to Chris, dude, I can only do what I do because you are doing what actually matters.
How did you get to that point then? Because
he didn't believe it. I believed it because I value family. I value the fact that Chris is home. Like, I don't want to travel and not have one of us there. And so I'm like, of course this is your money. Because I wouldn't be able to do this without your support. And then he stepped in and started doing all kinds of stuff and like acting as being the CFO of the company, and hugely helpful as we started to grow. And then it became very apparent, okay, you managing operations in my business is not your calling. This is not what makes your heart sing. And it's also bad for a marriage because all we do is talk about work now. And I don't want to do that. But I think that is critical. That if you don't value the support that your partner provides, that's a huge problem.
What I love, everything that you're saying as well, is it's both sides of it. Because, you know, it's him feeling sensitive, feeling like he's not worthy, which is a trigger from childhood. And I definitely believe, at least for myself, don't want to say it for other people, my triggers are mine to own. My triggers are mine to work on, and my triggers are mine to overcome. I don't look to Tom to get me over my triggers. Yep. But I do ask him to help me until I'm okay with it. So if there's something that triggers me, it's like, hey, right now I'm being triggered. Please don't say this word. I'm working on X, Y, and Z. And as we go, I'm going to get better at the trigger. And then afterwards, you can use that word or whatever it is. So I definitely think it becomes these two sides, right? Where one person needs to work on one side and then you need to work on that idea or the attitude of you get home and you're like, I've been traveling all week. And so, you know, why can't I leave my suitcase here? In moments like, did you ever watch the movie Sliding Doors?
I have never seen that.
A long time ago. Gwyneth Paltrow.
Never seen it.
Basically, she goes to get on a train. And I don't really remember the whole story, but the concept. So she's running for a train and she misses it, right? The doors close. Sliding doors close. And as soon as the doors close, the movie starts with what life would have looked like if she made the train. And then all this other stuff happens on the train. And you see these completely different trajectories of their lives because she missed that sliding door moment. The idea of there's this one moment or two where you go, I can make this decision and now your life is completely different. Or I can make this decision and before you know it, your life is completely different. As you're telling the story, I really was thinking about how many people have those sliding door moments where they go, oh, my partner, my husband, whoever, he's insecure, he's bringing this to the table, I can't do anything right, and so I have to leave this relationship. Or the sliding door moment like yourself, where you both decide to work on it together. And it's not about him It's not about just you, it's about both of you. And you both come together, and in working on it, now you can say you've been together for 26 years. But so many people stop at that, I don't know what year it was, but like that 14-year mark where they go, I'm done. I'm done, because they get triggered over everything I do. I've got this dream, I've got this ambition, and maybe they're holding me back, quote unquote.
Right.
How did you work through that? Because again, that sliding door moment can dictate whether your relationship fails or whether it can be like you, where you can sit here right now and you can say, we've overcome this.
Well, number one, couple rules around this for me personally. You have to be willing to work on yourself. So couples therapy, in my opinion, doesn't work that well if you're not also willing to work on yourself. Second, you cannot change your marriage alone. Can't do it. And so if you're in a situation where you're working on yourself and you're willing to change, but you have a partner that won't go to therapy or won't work on themselves or won't get sober or won't take, like I actually said to Chris, one of the conditions is you have to take medication for a year for depression. Dr. Amen just looked at your brain and said normally when he sees a brain like this, they're already dead. Not from natural causes. And the fact that you meditate and you are basically sober except for if like you're going to have a sip of champagne or something, which is almost never, and you exercise every day, you have an incredible relationship with your kids, and you have very meaningful work, you have done absolutely everything to address your depression, but you're still locked in this fog. You need a ladder. Like this is going to work with this. And so if you are making very clear and reasonable requests based on what you need from your partner in order for them to be working on themselves or to show up for you in a way where the toxic behavior or the scary or unhealthy behavior is getting the support. If you have somebody that will not go to therapy or will not actually do the things that are a bare minimum that you need them to do to stop yelling at you, to stop, you know what I'm saying, that sort of thing, then you're out.
Did you give him an ultimatum then?
I did, about the medication.
Did you?
Yeah. Because he had been struggling for a long time. And I didn't even realize how much he had been struggling. And the medication was something that I needed him to do because there was a fog there. And I could see that there was a fog there. And I knew that it was something bigger than him. And so it made a huge difference. And after a year, it had made a huge difference. He doesn't take it anymore.
How did you do the ultimatum? Sorry, this is one of these so powerful things that you kind of like, yeah. Everyone at home is like, how do you do that?
You sit down and tell him. And you tell him in therapy. It was over the course of literally months and months and months of talking about particular issues. And then finally I said, here are my non-negotiables. You have to take antidepressant medication. And what was interesting about it is the reason why, because Chris is not anti-medication, but it triggered the feelings of being a failure. And finally, he connected the dots to this deeper story. I am a failure. I can't even get a hold of this. And so that was a huge transformative moment in our relationship. and excuse me, a really beautiful one. And, the thing is about my husband is he is the kindest, most amazing person. And it just goes to show you that when you try to organize your entire life around living up to somebody's expectations, whether it's your father's or society or your spouse's or your friends, you will be miserable. And so I feel grateful that we had the breakdown that we had. I feel grateful that all of this came to the surface because most of us are really amazing at coping or numbing or avoiding or running away from. Like, I think I've spent years trying to outrun my anxiety, my childhood trauma. Busyness became my addiction. And it also became my death sentence. And one of the greatest gifts that happened during the pandemic was life stopped and I couldn't go anywhere. And when I couldn't go anywhere and I couldn't run to catch a plane, I became present to the campaign of misery that was running nonstop in my head. And I often look at Chris and I say to him, I break into tears and I'm like, thank you for being with me. Like, I know I'm not easy. And I know I'm a positive and optimistic person, but I also know that this intensity is really hard. And because I want to be softer and I am a very loving person. But Chris and I kind of got into these roles where I'm like playing the role of his dad, very familiar to him. It really brought to the surface these old generational patterns that don't serve us. And so, you know, one of the things that I would say is if you have someone that you're in a relationship with and there's a lot of friction, which we all have if you've been, you know, with somebody for a while, work on yourself, start becoming aware of that alarm, learn how to actually give yourself the love and reassurance that you didn't get as a kid in those moments where you feel separate. The second thing I would say is the greatest gift, if you can afford it, is having some kind of marriage person, counselor, therapy person, social worker, spiritual guide, whatever, you can talk to once a month, because it becomes a place where a third party can actually witness the dynamics between the two of you that you're so used to that neither one of you see. And it gives you a safe place to practice new ways of speaking and to air out shit. Like, one of the things we've been talking about with our therapist is the fact that everybody in the family wants a new puppy. And Chris takes care of the dog. And he's like, I know how this rodeo goes. This new puppy comes rolling in here and everybody's enamored for 2 weeks. And then guess who's up at 5:45 in the morning? Me. And I don't want a second dog. Oh, come on, Dad. Come on, Chris. Don't be a party. But Mel, that is a boundary. You calling me the party pooper or the questioner really invalidates me, because you're not hearing my concern. You're not seeing me. And so we have literally spent 2 or 3 sessions talking about the fact that Chris's opinion is correct. He shouldn't trust me and our 17-year-old son, because we have not demonstrated through our actions that we can be trusted around the dog in terms of being the primary person with the dog. And so we had to come up with, well, what are all the things, if my son and I really want the puppy, what are all the things we would have to do? And so it was a really interesting conversation, because I had to see my own toxic behavior of using enthusiasm to bulldoze people.
Oh, and that's what actually I was going to follow up and ask, because you said earlier we've got into a pattern. And so especially when you've been with someone for a while, that pattern, sometimes you don't even realize it's a behavior, right? You're just like, oh, it is, versus, oh no, I'm bringing this to the table over and over and over again. So just like you said, that's so powerful of that you used your enthusiasm. And I've heard you also speak about how, you know, the dismissiveness in the language that we use, but sometimes may not realize we're using it. There was like something that you said one time, Chris asked you like, or something like, well, what's the weather like? And you're like, I'm not a freaking news reporter. Things like that, where sometimes like maybe you are just joking, but it underlying, if you do it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, even if you say a little comment like that, then maybe you are just joking, it's built up where now that is something that has actually triggered him that now makes him feel dismissive. How do you start to unwind that pattern?
I think you just start to do it by noticing. Again, it's going back to this like really simplistic advice. If Chris says to me, what's the weather going to be? And I'm like, I don't know. Do I look like a weather reporter? Something like that. Like really just snarky ass thing. If I say that to him, he is going to feel the friction in his body. And he is going to have an experience that he doesn't matter. He is going to, in that moment, his body will remember opening up the door of his childhood home and nobody's there, yet again. And so, and it doesn't matter what he does. Doesn't matter if he asks nicely. He was just curious. He thought since I was up early, I might know. I always know, so why shouldn't I ask? He didn't realize it was a landmine to step on. But now all of a sudden, he's feeling that friction. That's step one. Notice it. Step two is to absolutely then just soothe yourself for a second. You know, just put your hand on your stomach or just like go, oh, there it is. There's the little me. I just feel separated from Mel right now because she made fun of me. She's an asshole to me. Notice that and actually validate it. And then you need to say something.
But do you think it's his responsibility to tell you in those moments
Yes.
that's how he's feeling? Because
Yes.
if you said that to me, I would just laugh, right? Because I don't
because
have
it's
the
not your trigger.
baggage. Right, exactly. That's my, yeah.
That you said
Correct.
your triggers are personal. You also said they're your responsibility.
Yeah.
You cannot expect another human being to know where your emotional landmines are. And if somebody steps on an emotional landmine inside of you, which you know when it happens because you feel friction in your body, that's the emotional landmine from your past exploding.
So do you recommend then a good place to start when you're getting into even a relationship is listing out what your emotional landmines are?
Well, I think you need to do that for yourself.
Whether you're in a relationship or not.
Yes,
Yeah.
because your roommate's going to trigger it. You know how people get in these really like, these emotional tizzies with roommates or like people they live with like in college. They leave their dishes in the sink. What is that actually making somebody feel? It's making you feel disrespected. It's making you feel like your need to have the kitchen clean doesn't matter to this person. It makes you feel separate. It's the same thing. You will not be able to express the boundary in an effective way if you haven't first recognized what it's triggering in you. It starts with you. So yes, I think everybody should. Everybody should absolutely do this. And the other thing that's really interesting is that I have, through all this work that not only Chris and I have been doing, but that I have been doing to really once and for all deeply heal this alarm of anxiety in me and to simplify my life and to truly be happier and more connected to people that I care about. One of the things that has been really interesting about this is that I have noticed how often I block love, that I don't even allow it to flow in my direction.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah, like since I've been working on this, like when you came out with the balloons, because today's my birthday, or last year when you like celebrated me on my book launch day, there's something about the work I'm doing and our relationship where I am able to, like galley doors on a kitchen, allow it to flow so freely and effortlessly with you. I can receive it from you. I can give everything back to you, but I haven't always been that way. And it's because of this separateness that so many of us, myself included, had the lived experience that it comes your way based on a transaction, that it's conditional. And so it means that when you would allow it in, there is a cost. And so for me, one of the biggest things that I've done in my marriage that has really improved it is how I'm showing up and seeing, and it makes me really sad to think about the number of years that, my amazing, kind husband was trying to love me. Oh, I'll come down tonight, babe. I'll drive down. I'm like, oh, it's okay. You don't need to come. I got it. And then I'm lonely and I'm alone and I'm continuing with my story that it's all on me. And I've blocked love. And so there's a huge part of this too, if you want to work on your relationship, of really taking a look at where do you stop love from coming in? Where is your inability to trust and to allow it to flow into your life, not letting you link in a more profound way with your friends or, you know, the lover of your life? And so the other thing that I wanted to say, Lisa, about working on it, if you have somebody that's willing to go to therapy, or if you have somebody that's willing to do the work, you cannot change your marriage if you are with somebody who will not actually do the work. That's number one. You can change how you feel in it, but you cannot change the dynamic entirely. However, I don't know a single person who has been married as long as you and Tom and Chris and I have been married, who hasn't had really difficult periods in their relationship. And I don't know a single couple that has been married as long as you and Tom and me and Chris have been married, who have worked at it, who regretted it.
Ooh.
Now, that doesn't mean you should stay forever and try to change something that makes you miserable with a partner who's not willing to do the work. But if you have somebody that is willing to meet you halfway, you will never regret at least trying to make it better.
Dude, I think that is so freaking strong, because the amount of people that, and you actually answered my next question, because the amount of people that will stay in a relationship and try and make it work, and then 8 years later, they look back, they leave the relationship, like, I've just wasted 8 years of my life. They weren't going to change anyway. I spent the last 8 years trying. And literally, you just answered. It was like, well, are they willing to or not?
Yeah, like you need to, like, you're not trying to fix the relationship if they're not actually meeting you halfway. And look, it may take you 8 years to do the work personally.
Right.
To find the courage to leave and the clarity to leave. You may be so conditioned from your childhood, or you may be so spun around by somebody who has a narcissistic personality or somebody who's abusive. And going to therapy for yourself, even if they won't, that will actually change the relationship, because it will change you. And from a position of better clarity, power, confidence, and support, you will finally be able to see things that you can't see when you are mired in your own trauma, or constantly have the alarm going off but don't know what to do, or you're being emotionally abused or physically abused.
What about the people, though, that try to keep them down? Because when you have couples where one of them's really growing and developing and improving, and especially as you do your own work, right, you start to get more comfortable in setting boundaries. You always hear, it's like, oh my God, you're changing. Oh, you've changed.
Yeah.
And partners sometimes try to keep you back, try to keep you small.
I think that this is an absolutely natural part of what happens when one person in a relationship is growing and the other one isn't. And I'm going to give you an example of how everything we've talked about works in this scenario. And again, I will be the bad guy. So, Chris, as I mentioned, does not drink. I mean, it's not like he's been sober for a couple years, and then maybe he'll like have a beer on occasion, or like if he were here for my birthday, he'd probably drink a half a glass of champagne, but take it or leave it. And when he first started not drinking,
Because he was drinking too much, and then he decided not to?
he was numbing anxiety and depression with 4 bourbons a night.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and I was drinking a lot too. Like, we were both numbing and outrunning all of it back in the day. So when he left the restaurant business in 2014, he did not drink or smoke weed for 2 years, period. Just cold turkey. And I remember the first couple nights, he's like, I'm not drinking. I need to get my health in order. I need to heal myself. I need to do some deep work. Like, I'm really fucked up. And so I'm like, okay, I got it. I was like, whoo, this is a great idea. And I was, really supportive for about 3 days. And then his change became kind of annoying. because I was used to opening up a bottle of wine while I cooked dinner. And here's what's interesting. The fourth night, I open up a bottle of rosé, I'm cooking up dinner, I go to pour myself a glass, and I'm like, would you like a glass of wine? He's like, nope, I'm all set. And I'm like, you sure? I mean, it's just like juice. And he looks at me and he says, Mel, I said, no. Do not ask me if I want to have a glass of wine again. And I said, well, I'm really sorry. You're right, you're right, you're right. Oh my God, you're right. You're trying not to drink. I'm so sorry. It's just that I feel self-conscious opening up this bottle and pouring myself a glass of wine. I feel like there's something wrong with me. And he said, Mel, nobody cares what's in your cup but you. And if my choices are making you question yours, maybe you have some work to do. And so I want to tell everybody that story because when anybody grows or changes, it makes the people around you question what they're doing. So if you stay in on a Saturday night and your whole group of college friends are used to going out, but you're staying in because you're working on your business plan, people are going to go, come on, Lisa, but come on, because you staying in makes them stop and think about what they're doing. When you start getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning and going to a new spin class, when your roommates are sleeping and hungover, or your partner is, it makes them question why they're laying in bed. And it's easier to poke fun at you, just like I did with Chris, than to actually push yourself to change. And so that type of behavior is 100% normal. You should absolutely expect it. And if it continues, do what Chris did and push back on it. That's, again, this boundary thing that you have to know your triggers.
God, I love that. And you're so damn self-aware and so open because you said it earlier, like, I'm the asshole. I think just admitting it allows you now to change, right? It now allows you to have that better relationship. And so in moments like that, where you do this reflect, I can just imagine, like, as you were saying, I was like, oh yeah, I get it. Because when you're with someone, there's a certain behavior that then gets accepted. They accept you, you accept them. And then by them stopping it, it now may bring up shame, guilt, all the things that you don't feel when they do it with you. But now all of a sudden, you do feel it because now you're quote unquote alone.
Yeah, I'll give you another example. And this one's like really benign, but again, it's one of those little things in a relationship that can like explode into a big thing. So the other night I was home in Vermont and I'd spent the day working all day, and we were leaving the next morning to start this 2-week trip to go on the road to promote the podcast. And so I finish working at like 5:30 at night. I come out of the upstairs office where my, podcast studio and where we work, come down into the kitchen, give Chris a big old hug. I'm so excited to hang out with him. And he's like, oh, I forgot to tell you, I have a 2-hour Zoom call tonight because I'm leading a discussion about, I can't remember what it was, for all the alumni of Soul Degree, his retreat. And I felt that that kind of like, are you kidding? That comes, that little injustice, that little, like, what this is my, and because of all the work I'm doing, I noticed it. I always like put my hand right here. And then I just said, oh, okay, well, I'm sad. I need to tell you that I'm sad because I was really wanting to just be with you tonight. And he said, I know. I said, I'm really sorry. He said, I don't know why, you didn't see it in the calendar. I apologize. I spaced that tomorrow you're leaving when I scheduled this. I'm really sorry. Can you wait until 9 o'clock to eat so we can eat together? And so instead of it being the old thing, which is me being pissed and then sort of like, oh, okay. And then him not feeling supported. And it's just a function of both of us being kind of busy. We were able to just diffuse it, ask for what we need, expressed how we were feeling. We're both disappointed because he realized when I told him that I wouldn't be done till 5:30 that this, you know what I mean? Like, and it became a moment for connection instead of one of those little, like, you know, death by 1,000 cuts sort of emotional things that happen in a relationship.
That's so, and being that honest, like, I really want people to, you guys have been together for 26 years. I've been with Tom for 22. We just celebrated our 20-year wedding anniversary. And that communication, that level of transparency is forever. It's like the work in a relationship, it needs to be like, as you grow, as your partner changes, you need to kind of evolve together and then be honest with it. And as you were saying the story, literally 2 days ago, so I got COVID weeks back. And so because I had COVID, I wasn't near Tom because he couldn't afford, obviously, to get sick, because if we're both sick, our business stops. And so he's...
That was it too. I'm sorry to interrupt you,
no.
but Chris had COVID for the 4 days. Like, he was also quarantining for like 5 days, and I felt this deep sadness.
Yeah.
Like, did you just like totally miss him because you're in the same house
So
and you can't be...
It becomes a thing that you have to start to go deep inside, because it's easy to go, oh, well, I've just got COVID and you're just in the other room. And so it got to the point where we were FaceTiming each other, because he then slept in another room. So we were FaceTiming each other. And then he traveled. And then as soon as he got back, I then left. So literally for 3 weeks, we don't really like actually hold hands, have that skin to skin. Then I go away. Now, I got back like 2 days ago. And I get back and we've got a deal. I never have to pick him up from the airport. He never has to pick me up. That's a waste of time, because now you're driving halfway. Anyway, so we just, because productivity is like one of our high values that we both have, it's not productive, babe, for you to come to the airport. So that's just an agreement. But all my other friends, their partners come to the airport to pick them up.
Yeah, I would not. I'd be like, what? Well, actually, when I lived in Boston, it's not true. I would just take a car service home.
So I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm going to take, like, I don't think twice about it. But there's these death by 1,000 cuts, like you said. And I find myself very secure in my relationship. But it's a death by 1,000 cuts. So I don't realize the first cut starts 3 weeks ago, right? And so now we don't talk to each other. He gets busy. There were a couple of nights that he was in Florida, so the time difference, we missed each other. So we didn't even get to say goodnight to each other. And then it comes to the point where I get back from my trip. He doesn't pick me up from the airport. I don't expect him to, but then I come home and I expect that, oh my God, baby. And I walk in and he's in this intense business call. So he doesn't even look at me. Now, he's in a very intense business call. So to him, he's like, if I look at her now, he knows how tense he feels. So he's like, if I look at her now, she's not going to feel the warmth. So I just won't look at her.
Oh my God.
Now, of course, I walk in and I go, he doesn't even look at me. I would rather the intense look and the like pointing at the phone. That's what I would rather. But we're both not mind readers.
Right.
So in his actions, it becomes the last freaking gaping cut that now I'm just bleeding everywhere, right? If we could stay with that metaphor. And so I just get upset. Now, it's not normally like me. I'm normally emotionally sober. I can normally regulate myself, identify where the uncomfortableness is, where like the process.
Yep.
But I just fucking lost it. And I was like, oh, you don't care about me. And as soon as you start to use absolutes, you know it's an emotional thing.
Right.
With someone that you love and you've been with.
Yes.
Right? So it's like, you're not romantic anymore. And it became this big grand thing. And then, of course, bless him, because we've known each other for a while. He's like, okay, my wife, she's been pushed to the edge. So I know, okay, and I even said, I'm really tired. I haven't seen you in a long time. I just need time to cool down, because I knew myself. And I knew that anything else out of my mouth was just going to be more absolute that aren't actually true.
Yes.
So going back to your point of like identifying when you're the asshole, I then afterwards calmed down, realized, oh, Lisa, that was ridiculous. You overreacted. You need to say you overreacted. You need to go to him and say that. But you have to do the work and identify where it started from. And that's where I started to go,
The feeling of separate.
It felt separate.
Yeah,
3
and you've been
weeks
feeling
ago.
that separate feeling for a while.
But I didn't speak up over those 3 weeks, because I was like, oh, well, he's in another town. Well, I've got COVID. Going back to, you just use the reasons and the excuses of maybe why you're not connecting. And sometimes it then ends up on this big eruption.
Yeah.
There's one more thing that I'm desperate to talk to you about.
Yeah, sure.
That you dropped to me a few weeks ago. And I was like, oh, we were going to talk about this. Is you did MDMA.
I did.
With your husband.
I did.
Talk to me about that. What the hell made you try it?
Yep.
I'm fascinated. How did you feel? And what were the results? And do you recommend it? There was a lot of
First
questions.
of all, it is one of the most profound experiences I've ever had. I absolutely not only recommend it, I wish that it would become fast-tracked through the FDA even quicker than it's happening right now.
Can you explain what MDMA is?
Yeah,
in case people don't
MDMA,
know?
I guess the street name is ecstasy. It is a psychedelic drug that has extraordinary medicinal and healing benefits, particularly for treatment-resistant depression and PTSD. And there is a massive therapeutic community. I'm not even going to say what state it's in because a lot of this is being done underground right now, but there's a particular state that has a very robust therapeutic community that is tied into MAPS. And it's a group of therapists that specialize in what's called the integration therapy, which means there's a lot of buzz and talk about all of the kind of tourism psychedelics. That is not what this is. This is not doing ketamine at a party or taking Molly and going to Burning Man.
Right.
This is going and doing in a controlled, intentional setting a psychedelic drug under a therapist's treatment, and then 6 to 8 months of integration therapy afterwards in order to have whatever it is that happened in that experience impact your life long term. So I've been very interested in what it would be like to do this for anxiety and childhood trauma. MDMA, one of the reasons why it's very effective is it suppresses the amygdala, which is the fear center. And so you can revisit the past or future things that you're terrified about without having a fear response. So it allows you, under the guidance of a therapist, to truly address things that your body remembers or are stored in the wrong parts of your brain from a place without fear. So the way that we did it is this is a protocol for couples where you have separate experiences at the same time and you do your therapy together. So that separate experience becomes a shared experience in which you can support one another in your healing and in your growth. And then after you do it with the therapist, you then do one alone, together, just the two of you. The first time that you do it, you set an intention. My intention the first time that I did it was I wanted to look back and see the beauty in my life, because our brains tend to make us remember the things that weren't so great based on the negativity bias. And so I took it, and as it starts to kind of take effect, you start to feel very warm. It takes about 30 minutes. And they, Tom would go over there, and you would go over there, and you have a little, like, beautiful mattress on the floor, cot, and all your little blankets and your pillows. And this was a husband and wife team that does this. And so she sat with me, and he sat with Chris. You put on a blindfold. You put on stereo headphones and a 6-hour, insanely delicious playlist that is like a combination of Buddha bar meets yoga meets, like, I don't even know how to describe it. And the MDMA is the medicine, but the music is the guide. And because you have no visual stimulation, and because all you hear is the music, and they also burn beautiful, like, these guys burn like the Palo Santo and like all these beautiful smells that just trigger all this stuff. Every time the music changes, for me, I experienced like a 6-hour highlight reel of my past, present, and future. Wow. And not watching, but literally feeling in your body. It was absolutely extraordinary. And I left the experience absolutely feeling like somebody had taken coconut oil on a really brittle rope and just smoothed it out in terms of my nerves. Wow. Just this deep sense of calm. And it was just extraordinary. And then Chris and I recently did the second part where we were together on our anniversary. And we were at this beautiful resort and we had our own little cottage and we did our ceremony. You know, first you do your Zoom check-in with the things and then we just sat together on a couch for 6 hours and just connected and talked and just looked at each other, and it was just crazy. It's like the outside world disappeared. I feel like we, through the therapy we've been doing, through both of us really working hard on ourselves, through some big changes in our lives, moving from the house that we had raised our kids in for 26 years to southern Vermont, all of this has created a whole new chapter and a whole new way for us to grow together as a couple. And it's just been, it's interesting. I feel in many ways like I'm newly married.
Wow. And that's due to all the hard work you guys have put in. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
But that's so important. So I heard once someone say, I can't remember, it might have been Tom was interviewing somebody actually, and they basically said like, look, most people want a relationship. And if you do, you want it to be successful, correct? It's like, yes. Okay, if you want a successful relationship, it's always going to be work. So now the question you have to ask yourself is this the person that you're willing to do the work with? And I always, that really hit me because I was like, yes, there's no easy relationship. No easy relationship.
Well, I love that you said the work, and here's why. I think we try to find people to escape into.
Yeah.
We try to find people to rescue. We try to find people to fix. But thinking about it, like, is this actually somebody that I would be willing to work on it with? Is this somebody that as a baseline makes me feel respected, that makes me feel like they care about, you know, my needs? And is this somebody that I can talk to?
Click here right now to learn why a woman must never pursue a man and the power women have in walking away.
But if a woman pursues a man and he rejects her, something is broken in her, and she'll leave that club. And in her mind,